Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, the podcast that dares to ask the question, is that movie still good X amount of years later? The answer, often, no. Actually, I would be curious to do that experiment, to look back at our hit rate for, like, did the movie hold up, and see if, like, mostly they do. Because we've got quite a large sample size now. We've done like what 100 and something movies, like 115 movies, wherever we're up to.
We do. But the problem is, I love. By the way, like literally, we just had a discussion before we started of, there's quite a lot of triv, and we're like, okay, just immediate tangent. But the problem, I think, the problem with the experiment is, not every movie. It's not like we chose every movie thinking it would. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
There's been some deliberate...
Yeah.
You know,
we've skewed the data. We've
Yeah.
skewed it by going, well, no, I know that one holds up. We should do that one.
Oh, well, or the other way. Like, All About Steve should not be part of that data. Because at no point was... well, you hadn't seen it, but at no point was I going, I bet this might hold up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there are some duds in there. Like, look at sequel season. Fucking hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we also did did like that thing for a while where we made sure the first episode of each season was a stinker. Like we deliberately chose bad movies. So you're right. This is not the way to do that data. That's a shame. Maybe we'll go through it one day and pick out all the ones that were chosen more legitimately and see what the hit rate is. Anyway, I mean, I think we're fairly safe today. Like unanimously held as one of the best blockbusters ever made. I think it's safe to say it's even if it didn't tickle a nostalgia bone for you, Chris, you're going to come away saying, like, at least it was pretty good, I assume, because...
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
It's a classic. It's a classic for a reason, but we are doing Jurassic Park.
I think it's...
Go on.
I genuinely think it's pretty close to a perfect movie.
Yeah.
I think there's two... I could only think of two nitpicks.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's right up there with, with Die Hard and for some people, including yourself, RoboCop.
Yeah, little preview. We're heading nitpick corner this week, guys. That's exciting.
Well, they are critiques. No, they're not nitpick. I suppose there are some. Maybe I could think of a nitpick, and we could go to nitpick corner. But no, I just mean it's one of those things where I've got critiques, but they didn't spoil the movie.
Yeah, they're like pretty minor in the grand scheme of what the film is. Yeah, Yeah, I'd say that's fair. That's pretty much, I think, where I landed on. I mean, it's as close. It's as close as you really get realistically to an objectively perfect film. It's really well done. We'll get into the nitty gritty. But before we do that, let's do history. So my memory of this is that you've not. This is not a film from your childhood at all.
No, famously, not allowed to watch it. There was a running gag then that I was always too young, no matter how old I was. Like, I remember there was a bit, so basically, and it's one of those things where I'm sure at a certain age I could have watched it, or actually if I'd have maybe pushed. But I think it was one of those things where an older friend, like, down the road had it, and my mum was like, no, that's too scary, it's too young, because dinosaurs. And, like, they wouldn't let me watch it with them. I think, I don't know. I just remember my mum being like, that looks too scary. And then that became a bit of a running joke. And, like at uni, when I finally did watch it, she was like, oh, you're too young. Like, that became a bit of a bit. But basically at uni, there was a friend who was a really big fan. And he was like, I can't believe you've not watched this movie. We're watching this movie. Yeah. So basically, I was sort of forced to sit down and watch the movie. And I enjoyed it. Like, it was never, do you know what I mean? I think sometimes when you haven't seen a film, people that have seen the film and love it interpret it as you don't like the movie, or you're not gonna like the movie, or whatever. That's like, no, it's a really good film. I must admit, I didn't have the experience I had, which we've already talked about, watching Die Hard for the first time, where I was like, fucking hell, this is a good movie. Or the second time, because the first time I wasn't paying attention. And the people I was watching it with being like, yes, it's a classic, you knob, for a reason. But I definitely really enjoyed it. But I have to say, even then, though, despite that, because there was, I don't think anyone. I mean, arguably, I've been forced to watch it this time as well. But, I think there's always a caveat when you watch something in that scenario where I really enjoyed it. Saw it at uni for the first time, really enjoyed it. I have to say, I should even, tenfold enjoyment this time, though. This time, oh, fucking hell, this is great. So, yeah. But I do have a lot of friends. We're definitely the right generation for this movie. Mm-hmm. I've got a lot of friends. I've got one friend in particular, my friend Tom, who loves this movie.
Yeah,
and loves dinosaurs because of it. So yeah, what's your history with it?
So this was my very first experience going to the cinema. This is a very, very solidified memory. So the circumstances under which I saw this film were interesting because my parents found out pretty quickly that, I wasn't easily scared. And I think sometimes there is an element of, when a film might be too scary for your children, there's an element of knowing your child in that. If that makes sense. There's a lot of 12A films, if your kid is young enough, could theoretically be too scary for your child, right? But it's just about knowing the kid. And I saw a lot of shit very young that I shouldn't have seen, as we know.
Can I say, knowing the kid, and I think maybe, I'd have to ask her, but I think maybe this was the thing with my mum. Knowing your kid, or slightly projecting what you would find too scary.
Right, yes.
My mum doesn't like snakes. My mum doesn't like snakes, for example. And it's not that hard to track from not liking snakes to there's a line there, I think, that maybe is closer from snakes to Jurassic Park than snakes to a Rude movie, which because for movies that perhaps contained comedy I shouldn't be seeing or stuff like that weren't as much of a problem.
Yeah. Well, I guess to slightly rephrase, I guess in terms of getting it right, it's about knowing your kid specifically. So not risking the kid seeing a film that might scare them. It comes down to you really understanding your kid, I think, to it too. Because at the end of the day, we restrict films completely 15 and up. But there's that borderline when a movie is like a 12, where an adult can bring them in, and it's that question mark, or a PG or whatever, depending on the age of the kid. And the adult has to make the call.
Or is it now 12? Because I thought
it might have been a PG.
We're going on so many tangents. Huh?
It might have been a PG.
No. I thought the rule. I thought this came in for Spider-Man.
12A came in with Spider-Man. So. Yeah, that's true. So Jurassic Park must have been a PG because I saw it under that age. So yeah. Well, I'll tell you what age I was, Chris. I just looked it up. I was 5 years old.
Yeah, when you said this was my first cinema-going experience, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So I was... I'll tell you the story of how this occurred, right? So there's a few things that...
So it was... I've just looked it up to confirm. Sorry to interrupt you. It was a PG.
Yeah, no, as soon as I realised, I was under 12 and 12A didn't exist yet, which is a rating in the UK, but for those who aren't aware, that came in when Spider-Man came out, and it was rated 12, and a lot of children couldn't see Spider-Man. So they basically adjusted, so we have a rating in the UK called 12A, which means 12 accompanied, which means if you're not accompanied, you have to be over 12. If you're with an adult, you can go in under that age.
Which I mean, spoilers, and we've talked about Spider-Man, but actually, no, we haven't talked about Spider-Man, have we? But spoilers. A man gets fucking sawn in half by a jet ski, essentially. It warrants its 12 rating, I would argue.
Jurassic Park, you mean?
No, I mean Spider-Man.
Sawn in half with a jet ski.
At the end, the death at the end. I'm trying to not be too spoilerific.
Yeah.
Essentially,
He gets impaled.
Impaled by a flying jet ski. I think it warrants being a 12.
Yeah. There's definitely moments you could argue it. Ratings are bullshit. Who cares? But my point is that what happened here was my parents, one, just didn't know much about the movie. That's number one. Number two, they weren't the ones who took me. So what happened was I have an auntie who shall go unnamed here, just for just privacy reasons, I guess. And she had recently separated from her husband, and he had taken her kids to see the film, their kids to see the film, but from her perspective, obviously. And she had wanted to do that because she wanted to see the movie. My parents didn't know really much about the film, didn't really care, knew I liked dinosaurs. Because I was 5, of course I liked dinosaurs. Do you know what I mean? What 5-year-old didn't like dinosaurs? And I guess I was nearly 6 looking at it. I was like, I'd have been 5. Yeah, I'd have been like a month or 2 away from being 6, but that doesn't make much of a difference. But my point is, my auntie took me almost out of like spite.
What I would love to know is whether your auntie then watched the movie with you and turned to her ex-husband and was like, "What the fuck?"
No, she wanted to see it. She knew exactly what she was getting into. She 100% understood. Okay, but I think she also understood that, like, yeah, I wasn't going to be too scared. But I got to tell you, Chris, genuinely magical experience. So I'd had the cinema described to me, before it, and my image of what a cinema was like a corridor with like TVs mounted to the walls. Like, I just couldn't understand the concept of it. And then when she took me and we went into this room, I cannot tell you how much my little mind exploded when I saw the size of this screen. And I saw the layout of the seating. And it all made sense, but I was like, wow. And then the movie starts. And I honestly felt like if I reached out and touched the screen, I'd fall into the movie. Like, I was like the definition of transported. So when you take that and you add it to one of the greatest movies ever made, especially just if we're going purely on just like entertainment value, one of the greatest movies ever made. Obviously, there are more important movies. There are more culturally important movies. There are maybe more like, well, I don't know. I was gonna say there are movies that like maybe pushed the form forward further technically, but actually this one was a huge technical advancement. So this covers that too. But how lucky I feel that this was my first experience. Imagine if my first cinema experience had been Space Jam.
You still would have enjoyed that.
I would have enjoyed that. I absolutely would have enjoyed that. But like, come on, this is not the level. This is something different. So yeah, I was absolutely transfixed from minute 1 to the end. Like, greatest day of my life. I was 5, of course it was, and like just absolutely adored this film and could not wait for it to come out on video so I could watch it again and again and again.
Look, Dan, only you know how you feel, right? But I just want to make this argument because it's in my head, right?
Do it.
I think. Because you got to remember, Space Jam, young, from a 5-year-old's perspective. No, hear me out, right? They go, although it wouldn't have been out at this point, but anyway, they go, so you'd have been 7. Maybe, if my maths.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly look that up.
They go into a world, there's Looney Tunes, which you would have loved. They go into the Looney Tune world, there's 3D, popping stuff, there's talking directly to the audience. I think the experience would have been just as magical at that age if it was Space Jam.
Yeah.
I just think you get to sound cooler now telling this story of being Jurassic Park.
Maybe, but adult me appreciates that that's the first thing I got to see.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the same way that like I feel very lucky that my first concert was a band that I still think are really awesome, Sum 41, rather than like a lot of my friends whose first gig was like, pop act that they're now mildly embarrassed they went and saw. Like, you know what I mean? That's very common, or at least it's been common amongst people I've spoken to. So I feel like I got lucky on both counts. So yeah, I had a great time. Obviously, just the most amazing movie to do. You're right, because I did see Space Jam in the cinema when it came out. I'd have been about 8 or 9. And it was amazing. I had an amazing time watching that too. So yeah, 100%. And I remember that one I actually went back and saw a second time. Like, I saw Space Jam in the cinema twice. I enjoyed it so much. So you're not wrong. So yeah, I think like it's going to be hard for me to separate full-on nostalgia for the film. So I'm going to try and be as objective as possible when we review this. But I just want the context out there that this is a very special film for me, for that reason. So yeah, there you go. That's the backstory. Let's get into it. Where do you want to start with this film? Because my first thought in terms of where you start reviewing this film is like just the pacing of it, because the pacing of it needs to be studied by scientists, I think.
Yeah, the way the film paces itself and also juggles, because of its amazing pacing, juggles tones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this movie manages to be a family fantasy adventure film.
Yep.
And a horror movie.
Yep.
Like,
well, and a ponderance on the ethics of science and man's desire to be God. Like, it's mad how much this film is doing.
Yeah, and the story of a man realizing he could be a father. Like,
it's a lot, isn't it? There's a lot going on in this film. It's crazy
what this movie is. Well, I'd argue. Okay, no, we won't get to my critique just yet. Let's praise it. But I would argue there's some things taken out, or one thing taken out to accommodate all those things. Again, quite rightly, my critique is not damaging to the film, in my opinion. It's so beautifully paced. And I don't know, maybe it's because it's doing all of those things really well. Like, is the trick that simple? Like, when it's a family film about the wondrous park of dinosaurs, it has that John Williams score. It has those amazing shots. The script is so perfect in terms of Alan seeing it first, being amazed. She's distracted. He taps her on the head. He makes her look. She stands up. Then we see everything. The graphics still hold up.
Yeah, they do.
And the special effects still hold up to this day. So it's just firing on all cylinders. And equally, when it's a horror movie, you've got the tension, you've got the water, you've got the suspense. You've somehow they managed to do different things with each dinosaur. You've got a kid who just won't die. And that's
as much as some people may want him to.
Oh, I thought that kid was fine.
I did too, but I definitely remember reading criticism over the years that they found is it Tim and not quite annoying, which is fair enough. He's supposed to be a little annoying.
I think the only thing, just maybe a little bit with the kids in particular, maybe a little bit. You go, oh, okay, well you're bulletproof because. It starts to reach a point where the two kids and Alan and what's Alan's partner's name?
Ellie Sattler.
Alan and Ellie have been through so much that you're like, okay, well you're just not dying now. This film is not going to kill off you four because you've survived too much. But yeah, it's wondrously paced, and like I say, I think for me the main thing about the pacing is the fact that it is both, and it manages to be both. And I think there's some very clever decisions in that. We go from the wonder of the day and the amazingness to this sort of slow, failed tour that by the time it's dark turns into pure blown madness because of Newman. So yeah, it's brilliant.
I think it's really interesting though, because I think when I was watching the film on this occasion, I happened to pause it in the middle because I needed to get a drink or something or go to the toilet. I can't remember why, but I paused it, and it was right before they were on did the tour of the park. The where the movie sort of, I don't want to say starts, but the point in which the sort of stuff that is the movie's most iconically known for, the sort of dinosaur action, begins. It's them going through the gate and, Ian Malcolm being like, what do they got in there? King Kong? Around that point. And I went and got my drink and I came back and I was like, wait, we're an hour into the movie. We're an hour into this movie and now we're getting to the thing that, the movie is kind of, what the thing people most associate with this movie, which is the T-Rex attack, the raptor stuff, the kitchen, all of that stuff. Hasn't happened yet. And I'm like, so what was this hour? It blew by and I really enjoyed it. And I was sort of scratching my head going, what have we achieved in this first hour of the movie? And I was thinking back and I was like, wow, we set up an awful lot. The reason everything that follows works is because we took the time to get to know these people. We took the time to make you feel the wonder, to make you feel the importance of what they do, but also heed the warnings. We've had the explanation of the science. We've had the debate around the ethics of it around the dinner table on that first night or the first afternoon, or whatever you want to call it. It's crazy. And I was thinking about it, the way the movie is paced, and the more I thought about what actually occurred in that first hour, the more I was like, actually, I don't even know how they fit all of that into an hour, let alone that all of the action takes place in the second hour. And then I'm watching the second hour going we're flying through this. We go from the kid coming off the fence to them being at the visitor center in 2 scenes. And I was just we're just flying now. And then they're like in the kitchen, and that lasts like a minute, I thought, or two. And then I remember that being a full like 10-minute sequence of the movie, but it's not. It's just the right amount of length. Don't worry, it's not criticism. But like we're just flying by the end. Then they're in the vents. Then they're on the skeleton. It's like it's like the movie is it just speeds up and speeds up and speeds up right to its crescendo, and then it's like at its absolute fastest. But by then you care about everyone, so you don't need to slow down to do character stuff.
The kitchen one got me because I genuinely, because I watched it. It was on like Sky. It aired on ITV recently, and I genuinely was like, something I had to pause it, or I think I just knew what time I had to shower after the film, so I knew when I started the film what time the film was going to finish. So like I'm looking at it like. It's like 10 minutes left. Where the fuck's the kitchen scene?
Yes.
I genuinely went, have ITV done that thing where they split, like the news aired in between, and I haven't got the second half of the movie or something? Like, I genuinely, my mind was blown that kitchen scene is in like the last 10 minutes. I genuinely, sort of, in terms of what you're describing there, because I've only seen the film once, I was going, what does this build to? What's the big crescendo then? Because all the iconic stuff I can think of, we've had. And then obviously they, like you say, they absolutely still nail it with the visitor centre stuff. I suppose this is a nitpick. I'm gonna say this is my nitpick, Dan. If you're ready to hop your boots on.
Yeah. I might put a jumper on. It's slightly colder today than yesterday, just in case.
Yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need another 3 or 5 minutes. I think we need some indication of what's going to happen to the park after. We need potentially, ideally, Hammond apologising or showing some fucking care for his grandkids, rather than it being Alan hugging them in the plane. Like, I think we maybe just need a few extra minutes. Like, we go from dinosaurs destroying that visitor centres to them flying away really quickly, and we're actually left with a sense of what's going to happen here.
It's interesting,
just
isn't
a throwaway line of, oh, we've called in people, we're going to slowly shut it down, but I suppose you don't want to end the film with, we're going to kill all the dinosaurs.
Well, they've already said that.
Maybe that's
why. They've kind of already said that. So there's an interesting line that I've never picked up on in my entire life. And I've watched this movie more than 50 times, without question. I can't, like possibly triple digits. I've seen this movie an awful lot. And there is a line that I've never really taken in its full implications. And they have lysine is a protein the body creates and is needed to live. And what they've done is they've genetically engineered the dinosaurs to not be able to produce it themselves. So if they stop giving the dinosaurs the lysine, or the dinosaurs escape, they would quickly then just die without human tending. Right. Now, that line is very quick and in the middle of the movie and feels out of nowhere.
Oh, no, I caught it. Yeah, I caught it.
And
I didn't catch that.
The implication being that
the answer for the second,
Well, so the implication being that when they leave the island, they're just going to die. It's shutting down. And then we also have the line, the pretty iconic line, which is, after careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. And he replies, so have I. Which obviously is the implication that he's on board with shutting it down now. You know, that line as they're getting in the Jeep at the end is a line that covers that. I do, however, I'm not as go on.
Well, that links to my wider main critique.
Okay, well let me just touch on your other point then, and we'll get around to the wider critique then. In terms of the kids of it all, I agree. I was really torn about that scene when they were in the plane, the helicopter escaping, and the kids were, with Alan, because I was like, that's very sweet and does a lot for Alan's character, but they have been separated from their grandfather the entire movie, and he was worried for a portion of time they might be dead. I feel like there's a beat needed there, like for sure. I think they just about cover what happens to the park. Only it's thin, and it probably it wouldn't hurt to flesh that out, but it's enough that I'm like, I got it. He's going to close the park down. The dinosaurs are going to die. In the context of this first movie, obviously that line they have to go around, I think, quite awkwardly, in the second one, I think. I think they have to sort of explain that away in the second movie. But in terms of the kids thing, I agree with you. They should have had a beat where they were with their grandfather, I think. I think Hammond should have been hugged them when they arrived, or right before they got on the helicopter, or just something. Do give me one beat, please.
Yeah. I think life finds a way. They can write around that fairly easily. Like
they can, Chris, and they can and they do.
Yeah.
They can and they do.
It's funny because you've linked perfectly there to my wider critique when you say it's great that they have that moment with Alan and it's great for Alan's character.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and again, this is a critique, this doesn't ruin the movie for me. I think Alan is really the only character that has a character arc in this movie. Like, no one else really goes from one point to another. Now, you can say, yes, Hammond has the throwaway Me Too, but you just get the feeling he doesn't... What you want from him is you want him to realise he made a mistake and shouldn't try and play God. But you just get the vibe that it went wrong. Like, he just thinks
it went wrong rather than... Yeah, because there's that brilliant line. It's really funny, but it's a brilliant line where he says, well, in Disneyland first opened, nothing worked. And Ian Malcolm replies, but John, when Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists. And at that point, you're like, if he's not figured it out here, he's never going to figure this out.
And let me be very, very, very clear here. Ian Malcolm doesn't need a story arc. No. Ian Malcolm could just be Ian Malcolm and to some degree just be Jeff Goldblum. Yeah. And that's fine. Like, I haven't got any issue with that. And like I say, I haven't really got any issue with no one particularly having a character arc but Alan. Yeah. But it's definitely something I noticed. And I think it's something that they make, like I said earlier, they make room for all the other stuff because of it. And I think that's probably the right decision. Mm-hmm. But if I'm forced to critique it, Hammond in particular should have had more of a character arc, and everyone else very much, whilst they've been through a massive ordeal. And again, essentially, like I say, I've used the term horror movie a few times. Really, in horror movies, often only one character has any form of arc. And again, that's fine. That's the genre. But I do think Alan is really the only one that goes from A to B to C, which is obviously his journey from scaring kids and being like, I don't want them, they smell, to, clearly having more affection towards children and accepting even within himself that he probably could be a father. Although, I have to say, fucking him and Malcolm spend a bit too long deciding to get out the car and help those kids when the T-Rex is attacking them in the car. But again, that's the middle point of the journey, I suppose, at least.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I think that's like a calculated thing. It's like, if the kids stay still, I'm only joking. If the kids stay still, the T-Rex will move on. Us going out there will only attract the T-Rex. Give them a second. Let's see if they figure out what to turn off the touch. I think you're probably right, though. They do wait a beat too long, because at a certain point, it's like, the kids clearly aren't turning that fucking torch off. They're too stupid. Okay, we need to do something.
No, Tim says, turn off the torch. He knows.
Tim knows. Justice for Tim.
Yeah.
Justice for Tim. So I guess for me,
what do you think of the character arc?
The character, I think you are right. I think only one character has an arc, and it's not the most intricate arc. And I think the reason they made that choice, for better or worse, is the movie is a debate about the ethics of what they're doing. That's the movie's like underlying thing. And for that to work, the characters have to maintain their positions. If Ian Malcolm by the end of it was like, I think the park's a great idea, that would feel hollow, wrong, and weird. I think where they went wrong was maybe not doing more with, as you've pointed out, Hammond's position, but I think they had their hands a bit tied there because of the book. So obviously, for those who aren't aware, Jurassic Park based on a book, and I don't think it's a great book. but it does have very clear. It's got a very clear like goal, perspective, approach, right? That it commits to, and Hammond is basically the villain in the book, for better or worse. He's like Walt Disney, like a mad genius that's maybe underneath pretty evil, and maybe more money orientated than you initially might feel, and as a result, if you want to make him a softer character, let's say, in the film, it's hard then to give him. You've got that balance of like honoring the book, but like, so you don't quite want to. You don't want to quite throw the character under the bus and call him a villain, but then you don't really want to fully commit to an arc, which is the problem. I think they should have just committed to him like being redeemed in the film and just been like, we're just being different from the book. But yeah, they couldn't quite bring themselves to do that for whatever reason. So yeah, it is a shame. And I agree with you on the whole that it does hurt the film. It's not a major issue, but ultimately it would be better if we had at least one more arc, because the arc for Alan is pretty thin. But then again, the movie is so action and plot heavy. It's like, where do you even fit that in without hurting the careful balance that the film currently has? Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just one or two tiny scenes that would make the difference.
Yeah, I think Hammond acknowledging the mistake more so than acknowledging that it's been a disaster. I think that's the difference. It feels like he's acknowledging it's been a disaster. He needs to acknowledge that he never should have done it in the first place. But then again, I don't. It's interesting. I began to sway a little bit when you started that, because you used the term debate, and I'm like, well, if it's a debate, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the movie doesn't need to land on a side. Like, and maybe because Hammond doesn't feel like he regrets that. He just regrets that it's gone wrong.
Right. Like, you feel like he's going to go in front of a tribunal in a month's time and just say, well, this would have all been fine if it wasn't for Nedry. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's...
Yeah, if you told me the sequel was him trying again, I'd be like, yeah, that tracks. I could believe that.
Yeah, right. 100%. No, I agree with you. And I think, like, you know, I'm not going to tell you now what the sequel is, because we're gonna watch the sequel. So I feel like, you know, we'll let that be its own little adventure. But yeah, no, I agree. I do agree with you. I don't think it changes my opinion of the movie, but I do think, like, if anyone told me they didn't love the movie as much as others because they thought like the movie sort of lacked character progression, character arcs, I think that's fair. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, but I really think it's fair, but again, for me personally, didn't affect the movie. It was just something I very much noticed.
No. I thoroughly agree. I think the other thing that struck me the most about this movie is the debates, the philosophical. So on this viewing, you know, I've watched this movie a great number of times, as I've indicated in this podcast so far, and I don't think I have ever realized how much this movie really does take the time to discuss its concepts and the ethics of what's happening over and over again, and really does, like, so first of all, there's the initial meeting around the table when, you know, it's that whole, you know, you were so preoccupied with whether you could, you never stopped to think if you should, which is just brilliant. And Ellie makes actually one of the best arguments, which is, you don't understand the thing you've resurrected. How can you possibly control it? You're playing with something you've not fully understood. That's super dangerous. Just because of, well, why not? We should try it. It is very, very risky science. These are animals out of their time. We could never possibly expect to understand and predict how they will behave, how they will, you know, forward. And then, of course, there's the other element of, which is, I think, is part of Ian Malcolm's argument, which is the universe, the nature selected these guys for extinction for whatever reason. We are messing with that. And there's that brilliant exchange then, one of my favorite lines in the whole movie on this rewatch, which is, God creates dinosaurs, God destroys dinosaurs. God creates man, man destroys God, man creates dinosaurs. which then has the brilliant tag, which is dinosaur eats man, woman inherits the earth, which is a brilliant tag, very funny, loving Ellie in this movie. But that line is so good. That just in isolation, Ian Malcolm's line there is so good. And then we have the entire debate about the flea market later on when he sat with Ellie and she's like trying to, the flea circus scene where he's like, it's, he didn't have. It's all still a flea circus, and she makes that point to him. He didn't respect the power he wielded. He played God for profit, and now all that matters is getting people out alive, and he can't really see that, but it ends on that really sort of sad version of him saying, spared no expense, which is a brilliant, brilliant moment, and is so well delivered. And that scene starts with shots of Jurassic Park t-shirts and merch. Like, this movie is working on levels I've never really thought about in terms of the messaging and the meaning and some of the impact of like the debate that's happening throughout this movie. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just over-egging it. Maybe it's not that big of a part of the movie, but it may be just because, hey, the book contains a lot of that stuff. Because look, a lot of those sort of more sort of philosophical arguments about the ethics of this, not really present in the sequels to my memory. I could be wrong, but yeah, I don't remember them being as huge a part of the sequels. Holy shit, it's really good here. It's really, really good here. Did you notice that on this viewing? Does that stuff strike you the way it struck me?
And like you say, because Malcolm's got a line as well, hasn't he? Where I'm paraphrasing and I suspect getting it wrong, but where he's like, and then you're selling it, and you packaged it, and you're selling it, and you're selling it, and you're selling it, like, and it's just brilliant, like, and the way the merch is slapped everywhere, and that's been sort of focused on way more than the things that should have been. Mm-hmm. That theme is definitely present and has different layers, from playing God to doing something for money and the wrong reasons and all the rest of it. And I don't think Hammond is necessarily. Well, I don't know. Do you think he is doing it for power? I think there is a bit of that. I think, again, I just wish the Hammond of it all and his motives were stretched a little bit. Because he even describes his grandchildren as, like, the perfect customers or something like that, or the ideal audience or whatever. But, yeah.
Did you think they did enough with the sort of flea circus speech to sort of give his sort of backstory?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
He sort of says he wanted to create something that was real because he felt like he was selling a lie. Whereas now he feels like it's expensive and he's monetizing it, but he's selling something real. And that's more important to him than any of the other bits. Like the potential ramifications of playing God. And look, I'm not saying that's a perfect storyline for him. And it is just touched on in that one very sad dinner scene with him and Ellie when they're waiting for for everyone else to let them know they're alive. Which isn't is a depressing sequence for them to be in. But I do think that kind of covers it, maybe. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, that's fair. No, that's fair. Yeah, you're right, that's fair.
He's still fairly leaning towards supervillain, though, I think.
Yeah. I love how Ian Malcolm is used to sell that storyline in terms of, like, he's actually the voice of the opposition to him playing God more than Alan or Ellie are. Like, I couldn't really remember his role, and I don't think his role on a why is he there is particularly defined in the movie. But I fucking love that character, and I love I was really also taken watching this, and a lot of it is Ian Malcolm, by how funny it is and how modern the comedic sensibility of this film is. In particular, the line, wow, that is a huge pile of shit.
Yeah, which is, can I just tell you now, is an ad-lib.
So funny, and again, such modern comedy, and there's so much and again, it's just the juggling of, like, and I think you're right to view it as pacing, and I'm right to view it as tone. Like, the way it's juggling these things, and is somehow
it's
so
both.
funny.
Let's being realistic. It's both. Like, that is often, yeah.
But how is this movie so funny and so tense and so thrilling and so horrifying? And it's amazing. Like even just the dark humor in it. Like, I can't remember the name of the guy who dies on the toilet, but when the
lawyer
guy is like, when he's like, I think this was Gerson and whatever his name is, and then Ellie's like, this too. Like such dark humor.
Yeah. It's great, and I think like in terms of the humor, like it is funny how this movie does manage to, like, it does have, like, it's not got what I would consider like a consistent sense of humor. Like what it's making jokes about scene to scene is like tonally all very different. Like these are jokes that if you were doing a comedy movie, these jokes wouldn't appear alongside each other because it would be an inconsistent comedy movie. But I think for some reason, in a movie that's already jumping between genres, you know, like a classic science fiction ethics debate mixed in with a sort of Indiana Jones sense of action with a bit of Jaws horror, which is what I mean. Those are the three parts that make up the recipe of this movie, in my opinion. You know, if you're flicking between all of those, well, all of those genres all have a kind of comedy that fits in them. You know, a horror movie is going to have that dark, cynical sense of humor. You know, an Indiana Jones movie has that sort of silly sense of fun humor. You know, and like that's why I think you can get away with contrasting those different things here, whereas in another movie it might stand out as odd.
I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine later movies in this franchise it probably stands out as odd.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll be interested to see how the direct sequels work out. I've got way more recent memories, obviously, of the Jurassic World movies and have a lot of opinions on those. But I've not seen Lost World or Jurassic Park 3 for many years. So I am going to be very interested to see how they hold up. On the point of Ian Malcolm and whether the movie justifies his existence, this was the viewing I kind of thought they made the most sense of why he's there, because the impression you get and it's because the lawyer's opinion changes so drastically so quickly once he sees money signs. But basically the implication you get at the beginning of the movie is they've specifically gotten in a sort of scientist they know from his writings will disapprove of what Hammond is doing. You know, his work on like chaos theory and like, you know, his understanding of nature and like playing God and stuff. The lawyers brought him specifically to not sign off on the park because they want to shut it down. They're terrified of this park. That's the notion you get at the beginning of the movie. But then the lawyer, seeing the actual creations, sees the money signs, changes his tone, and he's already to endorse the park. And then it's that brilliant moment at the end of the dinner table, the first dinner scene, when, you know, everyone basically says their piece, and the only person on Hammond's side is the lawyer, and Hammond can't believe it. He expected the lawyer and Ian Malcolm not to be on his side, but the two people he brought that he thought would be on his side aren't either.
And again, the comedy of him being like, the only person in my side is the blood-sucking lawyer. Yeah, the lawyer's just like, yeah!
The blood-sucking lawyer. It's brilliant. It's genuinely
It's just
very
the way
good.
the lawyer's just like, uh-huh.
Yeah. So I really like, I think Malcolm has come out of this as my favourite character of this film. I think, because it's funny, isn't it? Because when I was a kid, I kind of like, I was like on the side of Alan and Ellie, and I didn't like him flirting with Ellie. I remember being like, maybe not back off, dude, but like, you know, I felt uncomfortable and weird to me. I didn't like that, and I didn't, you know, I thought when Ian Hammond's like, I really hate that man, I was like, yeah, he is annoying. Like when he's tapping on the screen and he's going, you got any dinosaurs on this dinosaur tour? You know, being very Jeff Goldblum. Like I sort of understood as a kid that maybe he wasn't the most likable man, but because it went on a rewatch, I understand the actual debate being held more, and I'm like, no, he's right from literally minute one. Like before he sets eyes on a dinosaur, he's right about all of this. You know, and it's incredible how they write his character so consistently. You know, everything from Life Finds a Way, right through to, the stuff that happens towards the end of the movie, like when the rides break down at Disneyland, they don't eat the people. Like, all of that stuff is just so brilliantly consistent. And it's funny how the movie sets you up for him. They do it on the in the helicopter. Hammond says, I brought scientists, you bring a rock star. It's one of those things. And I just thought, like, it's so funny how the movie does such a good job writing him, introducing him, making him be consistent throughout the movie. He's constantly entertaining. Like, yeah, he's genuinely one of the best things about the movie. And they nearly cut him, which is crazy. They nearly cut that character from the script.
That's mad.
Yeah,
that's mad. I presume we'll find out more about that later. But yeah, I tell you one way they, not to objectify, but one way they. Well, I am objectifying.
Yeah, you should be, because I know exactly what you're about to say, and I agree.
One way in which they justify his presence in the movie, that scene where he's just been attacked and his shirt is open. Oh, howdy! Like, my God, what a specimen of a man that is. Whoo! Gold blooming. That's amazing.
Yeah, when he's all like lying on his side, all sultry. Yeah, that image is kind of iconic now. But I'm with you. So I have the question now: is it Jeff Goldblum here with his shirt open on his side, or is it what's his name? Tim? Is it not Tim Curry? Tim?
Yeah, it's Tim Curry, isn't it?
Is it Tim Curry?
Tim Curry. Oh, you're talking about
Tim Robbins in Shawshank.
Tim Robbins, that's it. I'd have to give it to Goldblum.
Yeah, to get to Goldblum. Goldblum's pipped Tim Robbins. Wow, outrageous.
Yeah,
outrageous. I'll tell you what I will say as well. I will give the movie credit for, like, I mean, she's wearing shorts, but they didn't overtly sexualize Ellie, which I was really. As an adult watching the movie, was like pleased with, because we didn't put her in heels or just an inappropriate outfit for what she was doing. She was, she was appropriately dressed, and like they didn't do the 90s thing of dressing the female character poorly to attract, like, so they could put her, in half her clothes on a poster or something, which I think was a respectable thing to do.
No, she's also actually, whilst she doesn't have a character arc, I would say,
she's a strong character.
I would say all the characters are written well, and Ellie in particular is written very well and played brilliantly by Laura Dern. But she's never, so unfortunately, so many female characters in movies of this time were damsels in distress, and she is never once the
no, she's not, is she? Like, she's always taking charge of a situation. She's always in control. Like, she chooses to go out for. In fact, they even do that scene. I just completely
say they have that debate. Yeah,
where she's about to pick up she picks up the gun and she's about to go. And Richard Hammond's like, well, I should be the one to. And she's like, why? And he's like, because you're and I'm a. And she's like, oh, we'll have a debate about sexism later. I'm gonna go deal with shit. And like, the correct answer, obviously, and like, absolutely, she's awesome in this movie. And I think as well, we already talked about, like, a dinosaur eats man, woman inherits the earth, which is an amazing line. She's just such a good character. She's really, again, like Malcolm, very consistently written, very cool, calm, and collected, super smart, very capable. Yeah, credit to the movie for not writing a terrible female character, which I think in the 90s, it's really difficult not to just write a female character and have her be like, not to poke this series particularly, but like Mary Jane, where every movie ends with her and in danger, and the boys need to save her. You know what I mean? Like that. We don't need that.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
Yeah.
And like, she's pretty badass in this film. Like, when she's in that like bunker with the raptor. That's a great scene. She's so good in that as well. But like, specifically, like, it's a really powerful scene for her because she's like, again, confident, cool, collected, very capable. Yeah, big fan of Ellie. How do we feel about Nedry? Or Newman, I guess, as you might know him. How do we feel about his whole character?
Was he actually his son? Because he calls him Dad. Was that a joke, or was he that? That's one of my first big thoughts.
I think that's a joke. I think they're not related. No.
Oh, okay.
Because he's Dennis Nedry and his dad is Hammond.
Oh yeah,
no, his dad. His not dad is Hammond. his surname.
I think again the movie does a really good job of making you understand the. There's a you've probably seen it. You may have sent it to me, and then I saw it again recently. There's a Stephen Merchant clip. Strap in, bear with me. I get to a point eventually. There's a Stephen Merchant clip where he's talking about writing.
Listeners, that means it's going to be a while.
He's talking about writing, and he's talking about, I think it's a Clint Eastwood movie,
right,
which has one of his favourite pieces of writing ever, which is there's two characters in prison. I think it's a movie about Alcatraz, and one of the characters says to the other one, "Oh, how was your childhood?" Or I'm probably paraphrasing and butchering, but how was your childhood? And he says, "Short." And it basically, Merchant's point is you can always trim, you can always take off the excess, and that one word, that small exchange tells you so much about who he is as a character and paints such a vivid picture. And I think with actually not much, the picture is painted so vividly of a man who clearly has been miserable for ages and has been asking for and fighting for more money. I'm not saying he's right to do what he does. I actually think some of that storyline isn't clean. Like, were they planting that can with the egg for a sequel? Were they? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's I think
he says the can can only survive outside a cooling for 70-something hours. Right. So by showing it getting covered in mud, and therefore we're
showing that it's
even if you could find it, you wouldn't be able to find it in 70-odd hours. Like it's gone basically. I think they were doing that on purpose, so it didn't feel like sequel
to wrap up that.
Yeah, I think so.
Seeds. I think they do a really good job of. I don't think you ever think he's right, but justifying and making you understand why the character feels the way he does. I think it's obviously a great performance. And his comeuppance is, they lay the groundwork for the acid thing beautifully. Like, and you also go, because he's such a. I think the other thing is, and this is the other thing again that the movie does, where you like the writing here is just so phenomenal. Not only do they set up where you understand why he's the way he is, but you also see that he's often the reason for those failings. I think it's so clever. The reason he gets the acid in the eye initially, obviously, then he goes in the car and just the which was probably when it. There are a few moments where the movie stretches the suspension of disbelief. The dinosaur opening the door and the dinosaur then appearing in the car next to him. But what I love is the first moment which is so subtle but brilliant, where the acid actually goes in his eye. He looks back. He's not learned. He goads it. He gets covered in acid. He gets worried. And then he fucking looks back at it again. He doesn't just get in the car. Like, if he just got in the car, admittedly, the bird could get in as well. The dinosaur, whichever type of dinosaur it was, could get in as well. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant.
But how clever as well, because you're right, they do a lot of really. I mean, the dialogue in this movie is brilliant. Like, they have a couple of moments. They have an actual full-on discussion about money. But even in the first scene, we introduce Needry. He says, "Don't get cheap on me, Dodson." That was Hammond's first mistake.
Yeah.
Well, which is just like brilliant. But also, I love that. Even though in a few months' time, Hammond's going to be in front of some sort of court, blaming Needry for all of the woes of Jurassic Park, Mr. Spared No Expense didn't look after his staff.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I love most about the Needry character is that all of the woes of this, all of the death, all of the disaster of this, the entire park comes to a close because of his scrimping. The man that said the sentence "spared no expense" 50 times in this movie, and I think that the movie's very aware of what it's doing there. It's very, very deliberate. And it's very, very clever. He is sort of a Walt Disney character, a bit of a mad genius, but that's like, probably stepping on a lot of people to make this happen. And Needry being one of them. And you're right. And they have this, Needry's so over-exaggerated. He's such a cartoonish character in this movie compared to some of the other guys who are a lot more subtle, but like, he's kind of perfect. Like that shot, we get a wide shot of his desk at a certain point, and it's like, not only is his desk filthy, all of the floor in almost a perfect circle around it is just covered in garbage. like a meter out from the desk, the floor is just covered in garbage. And I'm like, do the cleaners just not want to try? Like, they must have cleaners here. Everyone else's like area, people come in and hoover at night or whatever. Do they just not touch Needry's desk because it's so bad? But like, that choice to depict him as slovenly, like greedy, like thing is also like plays into this idea that he's not a happy man. He's like that because he's not happy. He's made himself miserable. And look, don't get me wrong, he's still obviously a villain of the police. He risks everyone's lives for his own personal gain. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Needry's a victim in all this, but he is also a creation of his circumstances, which are created by Hammond. And I just think that's very clever. The ending is brilliant. I will say Wayne Knight actually was really glad when he read the script that Needry died. He thought he deserved to. He actually was a little bit bothered it happened off camera. Wayne Knight had read the novel and was really looking forward to the character being decapitated, which is what happens in the novel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The novel's a lot darker. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's funny, earlier on you said Alan, Ellie, and the kids, you're like, oh, they're safe. Like, they won't get eaten. They are the only 4 that get off in the book. Malcolm and Hammond both die in the book.
Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because it is, I think, because it is so like a horror movie or a thriller. You are expecting, once the lawyer dies, you are expecting them to be ticked off one by one, and instead just really the most expendable die.
Yeah, Muldoon dies. Samuel Jackson's character, whose name I've forgotten off the top of my head, he dies. Like, yeah,
Arnold or something.
Yeah,
I think,
Arnold,
maybe.
Mr. Arnold. Yeah. He, it's I agree with you. They're very good. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I like Muldoon as a character. And I am sad when he dies in the movie. Like, I like that character. He has a great death as well. Man, that clever girl scene. Oh, because that's something that's set up in like the third scene of the movie, when Alan Grant explains to that kid how they suspect raptors hunted. He's like, you're staring right back at it. But that's when the attack comes, not from the front, but the side. Like, they hunt in packs. It tricked you. They'd say that, and you don't think anything of it, and you almost forget it. By the time the movie does that clever girl scene, you've forgotten about it. It's a brilliant, brilliant death. And of course, with Mr. Arnold, or Arnold, whatever his name is, Samuel Jackson's character, when he dies, it's off screen, which is actually, unfortunately, a bit of an accident, because they couldn't shoot his death scene because of a storm that hit the island they were filming on at the time. The sets got destroyed. They never got to film that scene, much to Samuel Jackson's sadness, because it was a whole scene where he was running around in that same complex where Ellie ends up running around. But I actually think the final product ends up benefiting from it. It's the Jaws head out the boat moment. It's when that arm lands on her, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Arnold, oh, thank God you're," and she pulls him around, and it's just an arm. That's a really impactful scene. Like, that's almost more impactful than if we'd seen him chased and murdered by raptors, I think.
Yeah, I think so, and I also I'm glad they didn't do this, because I don't know how he's used, but I know he's used in the future. But really, logically, you're probably killing Malcolm, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
if we're just in a world of we're working on this movie as a unit, and we're not considering sequels or the potential for sequels, we're killing Malcolm. Malcolm's dying. Hammond is a bit more of a question mark, because I think if you want to give him a redemption arc, it either has to end with him sacrificing himself or end with him getting off the island having learned And because they weren't really willing to commit to either, he has to just sort of live, doesn't he? It's a bit awkward. Because otherwise, if he's a full-on villain, then he's getting a death like Nidri's, a sort of like you get what you deserve sort of death, like a really brutal one. But if we're doing this softer version of the character, then you can't get away with that kind of death. That would feel out of place.
I've thought of another. Like people surviving death and it being mad, but there being a really good joke, which is when Timmy and Alan are climbing the tree and the car falls and basically lands on them, and that's like the third, or I'm exaggerating, but it's like the 10th time the car's landed on Timmy in particular, or he's been involved in a car accident. But it's when he goes, well, Dr. Allen, we're back in the car again, and he's like, at least we're out the tree.
Yeah. And it's cool because I will say what I liked about that was they do clearly set up in 2 or 3 scenes earlier that the sunroof is gone because the T-Rex smashed that in. So they're surviving in that moment makes perfect sense. Like that, true. The car would just go round them because there's no roof on it anymore. Like the glass of the sunroof got pushed in by the T-Rex. So it's like it makes sense that it happens, but it is like it's a slight stretch of like, God, they're very lucky they were in the exact spot where that landed. But still a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about the action sequences then, and this sort of like the big epic moments that people sort of think of iconically. I mean, we'll start with that, like the T-Rex attack, which is the first sort of large scale set piece of the film. I mean, I've always thought like cinematically, it's one of the best put together sequences. The way we choose not to show the T-Rex until a little bit later in the scene. We have the ripples first implying it's coming. The way that we have lots of scenes of them being sort of bored first, so that we're building that tension because we, the audience, know this is all about to go horribly wrong, and they're kind of clueless, and the movie kind of plays on that. The way that the goat disappears and lands on the windscreen, like the way it just builds and builds and builds the tension of this scene, the tension of the kids just continuing to do the wrong things, like shut the door and like shine the light, and like it's just you feel, even knowing they're going to get out of it, it's still horribly tense, isn't it? Like it's and the moment when it's upside down and Timmy's under it and the T-Rex comes back and Alan has to put his hand over Lex's mouth, and it's like right in front of them, breathing on it, knocking his hat off, and he's like, you don't move, it can see us if we move. Oh God, that's so tense. I love that entire sequence.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, and everything about it is amazing. The cinematography, the way it's shot, the music, the way it builds. The pacing, it's perfect. And I think that applies to, like I say, other than the sort of it's really difficult because in my head the kitchen scene is so iconic. And like I say, when it hadn't happened yet, I was like, "What the fuck's the kitchen scene?" But there's a lot of sort of slapstick stuff in that on reflection. And I think the action scenes are all amazing, other than for me, when they go a little too slapstick. And I think the kitchen, like the dinosaur essentially being like, whoop, hello, is like, okay. Okay, now.
My favourite example of when the slapstick works, because it's like slapstick, but it makes perfect sense, is when she's trying to hide herself in the cupboard and it sees her in the reflection and it runs at her and you think, oh, she's fucked.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah,
but it just like sort of whoops and head plants into the surface she was reflected on, because it's like smart enough to have seen her in the reflection and gone for her, but not smart enough to have understood what a reflection is, which makes perfect sense. And it's like hit the thing and it's allowed her to escape. That one I love. I think that's great. I think that's when the slapstick comedy is like, or not slapstick comedy, but the slapstick elements of the scene work really well for me. But that scene in all, so tense. When that ladle falls off that fucking thing.
Oh God, it's great.
That is. If I was that kid, I'd be like, oh, somebody put all this shit in my pants. I don't know what happened. just
Well, yeah, but the way he grabs the ladles to stop them
Yes.
making a noise, and then it's so good.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. In terms of the action and stretching believability, there's, as we're recording this, apparently I got informed about this by by a younger friend who I used to work with who messaged me about it. But apparently, a big thing at the moment is one gorilla versus 100 men, and who would win, right?
Right.
Now, if that is such a big debate and causing genuine debate, amongst social media or the internet or whatever these young people are using, then
You sounded like you were 1,000 years old when you said that.
I know, but yeah, more deliberately. That was the joke. But any scene in this movie where Alan or Ellie fend off a dinosaur trying to get through the door by as you would a human, like the notion that they could just by leaning a certain way against the door keep a dinosaur out for that long is mad.
Yeah, I think that it's tricky. That there are a couple of moments like that where I was like, one of them is in the opening scene also when the guy gets pulled in and he's like lifted up comically and like, because with that I just think like, well, when there was a gap, why did the raptor think to pull him into the enclosure to eat him instead of getting out of the gap? When he charges at the thing and the whole box that he's in pushes back, there's a gap. That's the gap that the engineer or whoever he is gets sucked sort of into. But why doesn't it exit out of that gap rather than grab him and pull him into his space? That I always, even as a kid, I remember, not maybe as a kid, but like a young teen watching the film, thinking that opening scene, a few stretches of logic there in terms of like how they got out, why that wasn't a bigger disaster than it was.
Yeah, absolutely. It's with the look as well. It's the fact that the girl is using the system which she just understands and then locks it and suddenly it's fine for a bit.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because they do set it up, but it's in one exchange. Because I wrote down, it's so funny. I wrote down a note. Like there's a scene earlier in the movie where he's like, if you weren't here, you'd just be at home in your bedroom because you're a hacker. Oh, no, he goes, you're a nerd. She's like, I prefer to be called a hacker. And I wrote down, they better pay that off. They better pay that off because I didn't remember that she was the one that jumped on the computer and locked the door in that last scene. And I was like, there better be a reason they've set up she's got a skill. Like, it's got to be Chekhov's hacker.
It's really funny, isn't it? And again, this didn't bother me at all, but it partly because I know when the movie was made. I'd love to show this movie to like an 11 or 12-year-old for the first time, like an 11 or 12-year-old now, because it is this amazing mixture of incredible advanced technology when it comes to everything that they do with DNA, but then like, CD-ROMs and old school. Technology otherwise.
Yeah, which at the time I guess was state of the art, but now seems
of course.
Yeah. But I think that the other contrasting thing we just talked about a lot of like the action scenes and how well how well they did at like building tension. Like that moment when the T-Rex like nudges the car and it rotates around and you're like, are they going to get crushed between that wall and the car? And then they climb over it and then the car's being pushed over and they're on that string and they've got to reach over to the wall before it comes down or they're going to get crushed. Brilliant. The tension of that is incredible. But the opposite end of the spectrum to those scenes are the isn't nature wonderful and awesome scenes, which is like...
Yeah.
When they first pull into the park and the car like stops and like Nadia's coming to join us. She's really desperate to talk about Jurassic Park, aren't you, Nadia? She's just said she loves Jurassic Park in case the microphone didn't pick it up. But the scene when they get to the bit where the is it Brachiosaurus is like jumping up and eating from the thing, and the John Williams score is just like the most like. I don't know, the most like, isn't this wonderful that it ever manages to be? And like that between the performances, the way the shots are comprised, the rising music, you just really feel that sense of awe, like that sense of awe that the characters are feeling. And it's a perfect theme tune. And we've talked about many movies on this podcast, and I think the three movies where the score comes to mind that are the most iconic that we've covered so far are Lord of the Rings, Back to the Future, and this. Like, without a question. This is one of the best scores of any
Star
movie
Wars
ever.
as well, obviously.
What was that, sorry?
Star Wars as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Star Wars. But I would still I'd put all three of those above Star Wars. I love the music from Star Wars. Do not get me wrong. But I would put the Back to the Future theme, the Lord of the Rings music just in general, and then and the music from this movie above Star Wars. Not a comment on Star Wars as a movie, but just like in general in terms of like what it's doing for the movie. Holy shit. Holy shit. The music is so good in this. And it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. And I'm not saying the visuals and the acting aren't also, but my God, is the music essential. Like, I think if you take the music out of Star Wars and replace it with like a worse score from a less experienced composer, Star Wars is still an amazing movie that works really well. I'm not sure some of the scenes in this movie, I think they lose a lot more basically than Star Wars would lose from that experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
But yeah.
We probably tread on Triv here, but I think it's one of those instances where it's okay to, and I'm doing what I often do, which is to defer to you as you know more about this, and I assume the Triv covers a lot of it. From my amateur point of view, I think it's incredible that the effects in this movie hold up so much.
Yes.
You know, there are many moments where those dinosaurs still look real, and you still get the awe of that. So one, what's your more informed view on the VFX, and two, is it? I assume it's a blend of animatronic and computer generated. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Have I got that right? Have
Yes.
I got that wrong?
No, bang on. Yeah. Did you? Yeah. I could definitely pass some.
To quote last week's film, Dan. Tell me more. Tell me more.
There's a few things going on here, and some stuff going on here that I don't think is done enough in modern film. To be honest with you. So basically, we're at the advent of CGI being ready for this sort of thing, and the original plan was they had a guy called Phil Tippett who had done some previs stuff for them in stop motion that they'd liked, and they were going to use stop motion for the dinosaurs. They were going to use puppets mixed with stop motion. So animatronics, practical stuff on set, stop motion stuff for the things that just couldn't be done with puppets. And ILM were sort of making leaps and bounds at the time, and they thought they could do a better job, basically. So they created a test animation of like a skeletal T-Rex, which they showed to producer Kathleen Kennedy. She produced this movie. So she told Spielberg, she's like, it's pretty good. Spielberg took a look at it. Was like, yeah, its movements are very smooth. Because obviously, the one downside to stop motion is often the frames. We talked about this when we saw RoboCop. Like the frame rate of a stop motion animation is never quite exactly. It doesn't feel as smooth as stuff shot real. So Spielberg was like, yeah, this is interesting. I don't know if it's quite ready, but let's see. So he gave them some money to do a more full test. So they did a fully fleshed T-Rex, not a skeletal one, walking through a desert. And apparently, Spielberg and Tippett, the guy that was going to do the stop motion, literally glanced at each other, and Tippett said, I think we're extinct. Because the CGI was so good, they were just like, stop motion's done in this case. So, first of all, the funny thing about that is Spielberg liked that so much, found that so funny, he then wrote that into the movie. That's why Jeff Goldblum has that line. So that's in the movie now. But in the end, they did, for a brief time, fire Tippett, sadly. Which makes me sad, because, proper artist out of a job because of a technology. That's always a sad thing. He was apparently, he says he left the set feeling sick and obsolete. So
that's a shame.
It is. The good news is, while none of the stop motion models would end up being in the movie, they did something I'm still not sure has been used since, because the CGI guys could make these very realistic models of dinosaurs, but the skill of animating their movements to look like they had weight, to look like it was natural, that's more of a thing a stop motion guy can do. So what they did was they created a rig where they made the model in CGI, and then they attached the computer to a stop-motion dinosaur. And they brought Phil in, and he would do the movements frame by frame, and then the computer would interpret that into movement. So even though his stop-motion creations never got into this movie, they hired Phil Tippett 10 days after they fired him to animate the dinosaurs and make the choices of their movements. So they have a weight to them that CGI often doesn't, because the movements are completely animated in a computer, and that you get that weird floaty effect. But because they did this with these stop-motion rigs to choose the movements from someone who knew how to make a stop-motion thing look like it had weight, that had been his entire skill set, and he'd studied animal movement greatly to work on the movie before they fired him, they managed to get this incredible combination of CGI animated by stop motion. And I have no idea if this is still in use as a technology, but if it isn't, it fucking should be. Because the result is brilliant. And then when you merge that with the fact that because they had animatronics on set, the CGI guys knew how to correctly light their CGI creations, because that's another problem sometimes. If there's literally nothing on set, they have to match the lighting and the way the shadows fall on the thing through guesswork. But if you've got a puppet or an animatronic of the thing on the set in the lighting, then you can see how the light bounces off the thing, and then you can look at your CGI one and go, well, I know how to make the light bounce off that so it fits in and looks like it belongs inside this shot. The compositing gets better. So, yes, this movie still holds up. It's absolutely glorious. There are one or two scenes where the textures are slightly rubbery, and that's just a thing of the dating, but they move beautifully. The light dances off them great. They feel like they have weight. It's a remarkable thing that happened on this movie, and especially using sort of, instead of using normal keyframe animation, building a stop motion sort of armature to manipulate to create the movement was just honestly a stroke of genius. And I genuinely don't know if this is ever used anymore, but I think a lot of productions could take a little, have a little put a little consideration into using this technology, because the reason these effects hold up so well are those factors. They really thought it through. It's incredible that this movie still looks as good as it does.
Yeah, because we like I say, I defer to you on a lot of this, but I've really understood through this podcast, to be honest with you, how sometimes when special effects look off, it's because the weighting of an object has not been considered.
Yeah,
and that's what doesn't look real. So yeah,
the human eye or the human brain, the human brain is very good at noticing when the physics of something are wrong. You've lived on this planet with this gravity and these physics your entire life. You have a sense of how a thing should and shouldn't fall or move. And when something's created in a 3D environment, all floaty, and doesn't quite obey the laws of physics as we understand them, even if you don't know that's what your brain is picking up, you think it looks wrong. And then you'll say, not you specifically, but you, the general you, might go on Twitter and be like, God, the visual effects of this movie were shit. Like, the CGI sucked. And you might not be able to express why it didn't work for you, but your brain fucking noticed. Do you know what I mean? When it doesn't quite work, that's why. There are two big problems you get with CGI when it's not working. It's either the weight or it's the compositing. And by that, I really mean how you mingle that with the real image and get the lighting and the visuals and the colouring to match, so it looks like it belongs inside that image. It's the two. And if you get both right, you're away. You're absolutely away. Now, admittedly, it does help that this movie is mostly dinosaurs in the dark. There are only a couple of scenes of them in daylight, and they do suffer more in the daylight. I 100% agree. The two shots where the textures are a bit rubbery or don't quite look as good are the two major shots in the broad daylight, which is the Gallimimus herd and the initial Brachiosaurus moment. But I
thought the herd was all right because they're moving so quickly.
Yes, they are,
and that's the point of the scene. The initial moment, maybe, but the herd I thought worked fine.
But I guess what I guess to say of Jurassic Park, this is where it was the least good it's still amazing and still really works and still won't take you out of the movie. I mean, this movie's worst special effects are better than most modern day movies' best. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's like,
I really like. I wasn't like not looking forward to watching it, but I was kind of like, Jurassic Park. It's not a film of my childhood, and I was expecting the experience to be quite similar to Ghostbusters, which is, which I think a fair summary, of my assessment of that was, appreciate it, but still not necessarily, something I would go to watch again. But this, I was like, I can see me introducing this to children in the future, and like my children specifically. I suppose like family or friends' children, if they're particularly into dinosaurs, and people know I'm like film and TV. I'll be like, you're going to show them Jurassic Park? Yeah, I'll sit down and watch that with them. Like, absolutely, I will.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really was really taken by it.
Yeah,
me
too.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was agreeing with you. No.
We broached on Triv then before we move on to
I've got a couple of other bits I want to bring up as well.
Yeah, what other notes you got?
Well, actually, very quickly on that note, because that's probably the last time we'll talk about Phil Tippett. Phil Tippett, obviously, also kind of internet famous for the fact that his actual title that he got in the end, in the credits, is Dinosaur Supervisor. That's the credit he got in this movie. And obviously it led to a very, very funny meme that I enjoy very much years later, where it was like, you had one job, Phil. Dinosaur Supervisor. Didn't go very well, did it? Name a man who failed at his job more. Phil Tippett, Dinosaur Supervisor. Which is obviously very funny. I was frustrated though, because that was such a great joke. And they brought Phil back for Jurassic World. And I was really excited that they would give him the same title, Dinosaur Supervisor, and that the meme could live. But they gave him a different, they rephrased it. And I was like, that's disappointing. That's disappointing.
I did love that whole plot of like, you've got all this technology and it's all amazing, but like a bit of rain and they're like, everyone get the fuck off this island.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like it's not. I mean, it's a storm. It's a proper hurricane. Those as we will get to when we get to Truth, can destroy islands like that. And actually, if it's an island full of dangerous species and a fence gets destroyed and they get out, you should probably want to not be there when it happens, to be honest.
Yeah, true. Fair enough.
I feel like a lot of the people are leaving. I mean, the island seems to run on like a skeleton crew anyway, because it's not fully open yet. But yeah, I take your point. I got a handful of notes I want to get through, so if you bear with me, I'll and feel free to jump in while I'm quickly snipping through these. I really like the opening scene of Alan, and how it sets up both his relationship to technology and his relationship to children. He doesn't come across as like the nicest character. You're a bit like, Alan, chill out, man. It's a kid. like maybe back off. You might have gone a bit far. But it does tell you a lot about him as a person, and I just really like that. And obviously they're using the technology to get the skeleton up, and he sets up our raptor stuff, but also it sets up when he touches that screen, it like flickers because like just technology. And they come back to that later in the movie multiple times. Like there's the bit when the cars die because the power's gone because of Nidri's plan, and he's like, "I didn't touch anything, I swear." Like, what did I touch? Like, it's very consistent throughout the movie, and I just really appreciate the characterization of these characters being so consistent throughout the movie. I really like the dialogue in this movie, but particularly in the opening scene when they manage to dance around what the park is. Because obviously we want to preserve the surprise for the moment when Alan and Ellie see the dinosaurs for the first time. But obviously, he's like, come to my park. Their first natural question is, well, what is it? Like, explain yourself. What are we going to? And I really enjoy the way this movie gets around it, which is he says, oh, it's right up your alley. And then he dangles the money and they don't care anymore. Yeah. Like, it doesn't even matter. It's such a great exchange. Just really, just good writing. Just really good writing, to be honest. I should mention, because people will yell at us if we don't, obviously, we love Ned's opening scene when he meets that guy, Dodgson. And the guy's being all secretive and he's wearing sunglasses and a hat, and Nidri just immediately and brilliantly characterized, Dodgson, we got Dodgson here. See, nobody cares. It's a great scene.
So, like you say, it defines that character so much. Yeah. It's so funny.
Yeah,
I was so thrown by those opening 3 scenes. I was like, I just, if you'd have asked me, like, how do you think this movie opens again? I'd have been like, it's panning across the park, isn't it? And they're there. Like, again, I had to check. I was like, am I watching a TV edit of the movie?
Yeah. Yeah. And they do a lot to set up the movie, though. I think they're really, really good. I think all three of them serve a purpose for sure.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
In terms of small moments that do a lot for characterization, Alan Grant tying his seatbelt instead of clipping it together. Such a small thing. I fucking love it. I fucking love this movie for little details like that. Again, it's sort of technology, but not. It's a seatbelt, which isn't exactly, newfangled technology. But even that's a bit above him. He's just like, I'll just tie it. It just gives us this envision of like this kind of old school sort of like almost like a cowboy. Like, I love it. It's great. Let's see. Introduction to the kids is great. I think that's really brilliant. I do love the choice to have Grant not end up in the car with the kids so that we can do the whole, he left us, I'm not going to leave you scene later. Brilliant. Like one of my favorite moments. That's not what I'm going to do. He delivers it so good. We haven't really talked too much about like the actors in this, but like, holy shit, does Sam Neill like absolutely kill it in this movie. They all do.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's a bad performance in there.
No.
And again, even though I think there should be more character arcs, I also don't think there's a character written badly either.
No. It's weird, isn't it? I think that's one of the reasons they get away with it. They're all so consistent throughout the entire movie. You sort of feel like they really understood these people, even if they didn't take them on a journey. We'll come back to the sick Triceratops because there's actually an explanation for it in the book, which we'll talk about later. But very quickly, I like that scene because it comes pretty close after the scene at the dinner table where they were like, you've brought these creatures into this world and you don't even thoroughly understand them. It's just another demonstration of that. They're obviously eating this lilac. It's making them sick. You've put plants with animals that don't go together in nature. And that's what's causing the animals to suffer. Like, it's just another little moment of playing God has not worked out for anyone here. And I just think that's great.
Yeah.
I have a nitpick, Chris. No, yeah, go on. We'll call it a nitpick. Can we go back to nitpick corner? Your shoes still on from last time?
Oh, mate. My shoes are on. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's wander.
I don't love the T-Rex car chase scene. I think it literally and figuratively peters out in an unsatisfying way, right? It's the scene starts with all of the tension and all of my goodwill because it will come in after the T-Rex attacks the car scene, which is like one of the best and most iconic moments in the whole movie. They've got Malcolm in the car, and then I think it's Muldoon and Ellie jump in. And they hit the gas, and as they do that, we have this one hold shot, and the T-Rex comes out to follow them, and we don't even cut. It's all just one shot. It's beautifully done. And he's so close, and he's moving so fast, you're like, oh shit, they're in so much trouble. And then it just sort of continues to chase them for a bit. And then there's a tree in its way, but it bashes through it. And then it just sort of gives up. And it just doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't really do anything, and the tension abates because the movie wants the tension to abate, not because it comes to a satisfying conclusion. So disappointing scene. It's probably the weakest of all the beats of action in the movie. It just doesn't go anywhere, which is unlike this movie because most of these action scenes have a crescendo, and that one just feels like a joke without a punchline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's reasonable. Like you say, I really love the one shot. I do. As you were talking, it reminded me of another one shot, the panning shot as Tim is getting in and out of the car and following Alan around, yes. And Alan gets in one door and out the other. Like I was like, oh shit, we got ourselves little one shot action. Is this movie? Strap us in a hallway. We got ourselves a Marvel TV show here, people. Like Yeah, somewhere Stephen Graham's writing down.
Stephen Graham involved in this somehow?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I agree with your point and was just reminded of that.
No, absolutely. I could jump in any time. As I said, I don't want this to just be all me rambling about my last notes. I think the electric fence scene is a little silly, but it is still really good. Like it's the 3, 2, it goes off, because that moment as they're climbing down the fence and Ellie's flicking the switches is so tense. But you also go, no, there's literally no way he's going to get down in time. Like, there's physically no way he can be not attached to that fence when she hits it, because she's moving so quick. And it turns out, no, yeah, he couldn't get off in time, and he gets blasted off. It's a little silly that he gets caught perfectly and then survives it, and like, yeah, right. But it does lead to the great moment where he regains his consciousness and goes, 3, which is great. Such a brilliant gag.
I think the end with him being blasted off is a little silly, but actually, in the way that the third Harry Potter book was my favourite, because it didn't particularly involve Voldemort. What I quite liked about that scene is I liked a scene full of tension that wasn't tense because of dinosaurs.
Oh, yes.
I thought that was quite clever to put a scene in there that didn't even have anything to do with the dinosaurs.
Yes, situational danger that wasn't related to like a monster that wanted to eat them. Yeah, that's true. Very good point.
Yeah. Which I quite liked.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about it, but of course the life finds a way. They find the eggs. We prove Malcolm right halfway through the movie, because the scientists, for those who don't remember, they're like, no, they can't breed. They definitely can't breed. They're not capable of that. It turns out they very much could breed. And the explanation for that sort of, I mean, to my layman brain, made sense. They used frog DNA to complete the sequence. Some frogs have been known to change gender. Sure.
That made as much sense as anything else, didn't it?
I'm not going to get too much into the weeds of the science of that. Works enough in the context of the movie's world, the movie's logic. We haven't talked
again. I imagine by the time we hit Jurassic World, the science is fucking humorous anyway. Is my assumption.
Yeah, to some degree. I think Jurassic World's an interesting one, because basically. This is in the trailer for Jurassic World, so this isn't a spoiler. They're like, kids are bored with all of our normal dangerous dinosaurs, so we have to breed an even more dangerous dinosaur to get kids excited in our park again, because kids are fed up of Tyrannosaurus Rex and raptors and what have you. So they sort of genetically engineer an even more dangerous dinosaur, which is a fucking terrible idea.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's not great. I do think that movie is all right. I think Jurassic World is, pretty good on the whole. But fuck me, there are some script choices that you just like, Jesus, Jesus, what are you guys thinking? But we'll come to that. So I guess we won't do that. That won't be this season. We're going to do the original 3. We may come back to the World trilogy at some point, because it'd be fun to watch those 2. Alan and the kids in the tree and the Brachiosaurus sequence. We didn't really touch on that, and I just wanted to say that I really like that scene. I like what it does for Ellie and Alan's relationship and her relationship to the dinosaurs. She's so traumatized from the T-Rex, and they're like, "Oh, it's a Vegisaurus. It's like you." And I just think that's a really nice way to have her relate to it. It ends on the gag of it sneezing on her, which is kind of funny and undercuts it, but in a nice way. I don't know. I think that whole sequence is great, and that ends with them being like, how are we going to sleep? What if the dinosaurs come? And him just being, brilliantly fatherly about it. Well, I'll be awake. Don't worry. I'll look after you. You guys get sleep. And that's just very sweet.
Yeah, no, that was very sweet. And again, because actually, I sort of, we didn't really, I pointed out that it was the only character arc. We didn't really compliment or analyze that character arc. I think it's done brilliantly. I think it's paced perfectly. Mm-hmm. It's done in a very realistic way. I love the notion of, the writing is so good in this movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know offhand who the writers were, or if it comes up in the triv. But
it comes up in the triv, believe me. We'll have a whole discussion about the about the writing of this movie.
Her saying, well, you don't like those kids, but essentially indicating, but if there were kids that shared your passions, you'd like them. And then you have kids that do share his passions, and at first he's annoyed by Tim, but then he grows to like him. Mm-hmm. I think Alan and the kids is done wonderfully.
Yeah, it really is. And also, I've got to credit to the 2 little actors. Like the kid actors, it's hard, right? Like there's a lot of movies where it's like the kid actors are like the most annoying part. They're not good. They're a bit stiff. the first Harry Potter movies, those kids aren't great. You know what I mean? Like it can be, if you're not careful, it can become real annoying, right? I sometimes think of the Liar Liar. I don't think that the kid in that movie's great, if memory serves. Bit annoying. Whereas in this, both these kids, so it's Ariana Richards and Joseph Mazzello, they both do a really good job characterizing these two characters, and I think they bring a lot of the they have good chemistry with Grant Samuel's character, so it's like, yeah, it works great, really, really nice, brilliantly done. Two last tiny little, well, one last tiny little thing, which is just, I like the moment where we reveal that there's a raptor in the bunker with Ellie. It's so sudden and out of nowhere, and it is genuinely shocking. And it just, again, ramps up the pace of the movie. Hadn't complimented that moment yet. Love that moment. The thing I wanted to bring up just at the end very quickly is Deus Ex T-Rex. Now, some people feel that the T-Rex saving the day at the end, just appearing inside the visitor centre silently, how that got through the door without anyone hearing it coming or feeling it coming is it's beyond me. But the T-Rex just sort of appearing on the inside and taking out the raptors and saving the day. Some people feel like it's a bit of a Deus Ex. Now, I do think it's convenient, highly convenient. I'm not certain I feel it's Deus Ex, because it's not completely out of nowhere. We've established the existence of the T-Rex. It is a hunter. It is going to eat stuff it comes across. It's not completely out of the realms of possibility. It heard the commotion in the visitor center and came for dinner. Doesn't, its sight's not great, but I assume its hearing and its smell are pretty good. So yeah, I don't know. How did you feel about that, Chris?
I thought it was fine. I think that one, in terms of not being heard, like they're clambering through the roof, they're smashing things, they're there's a lot of noise going on in that scene that the characters wouldn't notice, so why does the audience? And I think the problem is maybe it needs a line of Alan saying something better than this, but it's in their nature, because I think it's too easy the way it's done to view it as the T-Rex saving them. And that's not how I personally view it.
No, it's not. It saves them by accident, essentially.
It's after food, and it sees food, and it's eating the food. But I think maybe it would be less silly if that was acknowledged by the characters or something. But I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine too. My only thing with that T-Rex is how it gets inside. I've always been like, how did it get inside? Is there now a wall missing from somewhere? Like, did it bash through a wall? Because they come out the front and they come through like human-sized doors, like to my memory. Yeah. And I've always been like, how did it get in there? But I cannot tell you how much I love it. It's goofy, but it's so much fun. When it roars at the end, the big epic final, and the sign that says like dinosaurs will inherit the earth or whatever it says slowly comes down in front of it. Oh, that's so good.
That's great.
It's so cheesy,
so many
but
iconic
I love
shots
it.
in this movie.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I love it. I absolutely love it. That's all my notes, Chris. Sorry I had so many notes on this one. I didn't realise I'd written so much down.
That's all right. Let's triv it up.
Yeah. Oh, I thought. I literally leaned away from the mic for a second to grab something, and like that, I thought you were going to take a beat before you did it, but you just did it as I leaned. I'm back. It's fine.
Yeah, I think I did it as you spoke as well. I'm going to do it again, Dan.
Go on, do it again.
Jurassic Park needs more.
Yeah.
Let's triv it up.
I'm going to give you some dino trivia. Let's do it. So obviously, it's a big iconic movie, so there's a ton of trivia. So I tried to condense it as much as I could. I put like 8 hours of research into this, and look, I pared it down so much. Like, it's usually 2 or 3 hours if on a short film with not much trivia. 4 or 5 on I feel like I did 6 hours on the X-Men movies. This one took a long time, because I was determined to cut it down, because there's just so much information about this movie. And I will say, a lot of the information in the trivia section you're about to hear all actually comes from one book called The Making of Jurassic Park, An Adventure 65 Million Years in the Making, by Don Shea and Jodie Duncan. And a lot of the quotes that you'll hear from people that I will read out to back up to source some of the stuff that I'm talking about is from that book. There's other sources too, obviously, but that one is like 70-80% of where this stuff comes from, it seems. So I just wanted to shout that book out at the top. It's still available if you're interested, dear listener. Although I'm about to tell you half of the stuff that's in it, but there you go. So, Michael Crichton conceived Jurassic Park as a screenplay in the 80s, but couldn't quite make it work as a screenplay, and he eventually ended up developing it into a novel. So, he had a bidding war for his novel Congo in the late 70s, and by 1990, it had still not been made. So this is like 10 plus years of this movie being in limbo. It would eventually get made, I think a little bit as a result of the success of Jurassic Park, in 95. But at this point, the movie's Congo is in absolute limbo, and he's finishing up Jurassic Park and handing the manuscript to his publisher in 1990, and they want to know about, can we sell the film rights? And he's like, yeah, but we're not doing the bidding war thing again and just letting anyone buy it. We're going to be a bit careful this time. I don't want another movie going into limbo like Congo did. So we'll have a fixed price, $1.5 million for the rights, so it's not a bidding war, but it's going to come with clauses, so they'll be paying a little less for it because they're not going to end up, bidding and it becoming multi-millions because of the studios trying to chip each other, but it comes with a clause that the thing actually gets fucking produced. And I have some say on who it goes to. And that's the deal that they put out there. Now, Spielberg was in early stages of pre-production for a movie version of ER, which is also a Michael Crichton novel, which I did not know. I learned that doing this.
Oh, I thought you meant like a movie adaptation of the show ER.
Oh, well, that's how the show gets born. So Spielberg is developing ER as a movie based on the Michael Crichton book, and he hears about Jurassic Park. Now, he's had a lifelong love of dinosaurs, drops ER like a hat, like a drop of a hat, just drops it, done. I'm not touching you anymore, and runs off to sort out Jurassic Park. After Jurassic Park is made, he returns to ER and gets it produced as a TV series. Who knew ER and Jurassic Park were linked in any way, shape, or form? Right. Major studios all bid for the film rights. They all have a director in mind, as per this agreement, where Crichton kind of needs to approve, or recommend who it's going to be. So, Universal and Spielberg. Warner Brothers pitch a version with Tim Burton. Columbia Pictures with Richard Donner. 20th Century Fox with Joe Dante. Now, I would never change this movie, a word of it, ever. It's fucking brilliant. It's one of my favourite movies of all time. But fuck me, if I had the power to just for one day go to a universe where Joe Dante made Jurassic Park and see what the fuck that looks like, the Gremlins guy. Yes, please.
You think that's weirder than the notion of Tim Burton doing it?
Yeah. That's a good point. But I've got a real soft spot for Joe Dante's weird, dark sense of humour, so I feel like I'm just kind of really curious to that movie. But you're right, yeah. A Tim Burton Jurassic Park is a very different movie, isn't it?
Yeah, just dinosaurs, like, huh? like just this whimsical dinosaurs attacking people. Like,
I don't know, man. I don't know what his version of this looks like. I do want to know
what that looks like.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually have no idea what a Tim Burton version of this looks like. I can't even conceive of it. I would love for some interviewer to ask him what his pitch was. But anyway. So Crichton spoke with all the directors and endorsed Spielberg. He said it will be, and I love this because it's a compliment, but it is also kind of a backhanded compliment where it's kind of like implying like he only makes a certain kind of movie. I don't know. He says it will be a very difficult picture, and he called Spielberg arguably the most experienced and most successful director of these kinds of movies. I like the impression that we're building of Michael Crichton here as being a bit crotchety. It's quite funny. So that is what happened. The movie sold to Universal for $1.5 million before it was even published, meaning pre-production on this film began before the book was in the hands of the public, which I love. James Cameron actually said he wanted to make this movie as well, but the rights were bought a few hours before he could bid. I'm not sure if I don't know if his people have given him like different information, because there wasn't really a bid for this movie, but I guess bid in terms of maybe he just means like his pitch. But upon seeing the movie, Cameron has realized that Spielberg was much better choice to direct it. His vision would have been a bit more dark and violent, sort of like Aliens, but with dinosaurs. And it wouldn't have been for children who he thinks like love dinosaurs, which is correct. Children do love dinosaurs. So he has also said in interviews though that his cast was very different. He had Arnold Schwarzenegger as Grant, Bill Paxton as Malcolm, and Charlton Heston as Hammond. Look,
okay, now that I'd see.
Look, Jimmy boy. I love you, but no, no, that's all wrong. That's all wrong.
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. But the rest of that is all wrong, in my opinion. And not that they're bad actors, just not right for those roles. Crichton had mixed feelings about being offered $500,000 to write the adaptation of this movie once the deal went to Universal and Spielberg. They were like, can you write the script? $500,000 they offered him. He said, this is a quote from him, and again, I love this image we're building of Crichton as just really cranky. I was so tired of the whole area. I didn't really want to do the screenplay. I was sick of Malcolm, I was sick of Grant, and I was even sick of the dinosaurs. But I really felt I knew the dimensions of the story. So he agreed only to write the preliminary version. He says, I told Stephen, I'll do a draft for you and cut it down to a budgetable size, but you're going to want someone else to polish the characters. Apparently this really surprised Spielberg, because writers never say, get someone else.
Writers usually aren't bored of the worlds they create, like, within an instance, but, you know.
I think I love Michael Crichton. I think I love this man. It's my favourite. Yeah, so he did indeed write the first draft of the script and handed it off to Spielberg and was like, I'm fucking out. I'm done. Do what you will. I'm sick of these fucking dinosaurs. And it was then handed to Malia Scotch-Marmo, who had just co-written Hook, the film that we reviewed on this very podcast, which Spielberg directed. So Spielberg had just done Hook with her and was like, come on in, see if you can take a crack at Jurassic Park. So they started working together on this script in October 91, and she actually chose to start from scratch. So she actually put Crichton's draft completely aside, that he'd been paid $500,000 for, and he didn't even want to do. And she just used the novel as the basis for her, script. She consulted with Crichton a little bit, though. She did meet with him. But about 5 months of work went into this. Her and Spielberg, back and forth. She'd send him pages. He'd say, this doesn't work, this does work. And they'd go back and forth and back and forth. And finally, they made a real note of this. She sends him the finished draft or whatever, of her finished version of this draft. They specify Spielberg read it twice. That's in the trivia multiple times. I don't know why, but he read that script twice, Chris. Just so you're aware. But Spielberg, unfortunately, did not care for it. He didn't think the finished thing worked at all, and they parted ways. She actually would later say, and again, this is in that book I mentioned earlier, she said, as a writer, that's a terrible feeling. The natural urge is to say, give me another week, I can work it out. I know I can, but the truth is, sometimes you hit, and sometimes you miss. It's just a shame that it takes so long to find out. So, obviously, she gave 5 months of her life for this, and then Spielberg was like, nah, it's not working. Which is a shame. I'm sure she got paid, but I guess as a creative, you want to see your words hit the screen ultimately, right? You want to see it get made. So I do feel for her on that front. You still there, Chris? We got you.
Yeah, okay. I feel for her too. There was nothing.
It was one of those things where it went so silent, like I couldn't even hear like the ambient noise, and I was like, shit, have I actually just lost Chris?
Right. I thought you were like, is he fucking looking up more Hanson songs?
Yeah.
No, I was
you might be. At this point, Chris, it'd be folly for me to try and stop you from doing that. Universal then said to Spielberg, look, this script thing hasn't worked out so far. You've got Crichton's reluctant script. You've got the script you don't like from the lady you wrote on Hook. We recommend bringing in David Coop. Coop? I never know how to pronounce his name. He'd just written Death Becomes Her, which is a great movie, which we will at some point be covering on Rewind Reviews, I think, because I love that movie. And the two started working together on this film. Once again, Co-op didn't like the idea of reverse engineering or unpicking another writer's work, so he refused to even read the other two drafts that existed before he completed his own. So once again, Crichton's draft just gone forever. So yeah, he completed his own script, worked exclusively from the novel as source material. There were a couple of sequences that were mandated. He had to have the T-Rex attack on the tour vehicle and the raptors in the kitchen. Otherwise, though, he was given a lot of freedom. There were a couple of other exceptions, like Spielberg wanted him to remove. There's an opening scene where some children are attacked by small dinosaurs. He thought that was too dark for the movie he was making. And then there was another sequence that he was like, for budget reasons, it's in the book, we can't do it. It's a sequence where a T-Rex chases Grant and the children downriver before Muldoon tranquilizes it. He was like, cut both of those. So that was kind of his like goal. But interestingly, I should say, he wanted to flesh out the characters, but he thought Grant was a bit flat and he didn't care for Malcolm, so he tried to fuse them into one character. He said, this is a quote from him, from David Co-op, I told Stephen before I started, this guy's gotta go, referring to Malcolm. He's just talking for pages at a time about esoteric scientific concepts. Now, it's interesting because Scotch Marmo, the previous writer, she had also chosen to remove Ian Malcolm from her script. But the funny thing about this production is they were already casting the movie based on the book because this was in pre-production before the book was even released. So the script was being written alongside casting. And they had been casting for Malcolm, assuming that the character would make it into the final movie. Would you like to hear some of the names that screen tested for the part of Malcolm?
Yeah, go for it.
Ralph Macchio, Michael Keaton, Bruce Campbell, Johnny Depp, Ted Danson, Steve Guttenberg, the Goot, Jim Carrey, and Michael J. Fox.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I think I hate to say it, but I think Johnny Depp could have done it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think of those. I don't know, man.
I think Michael J. Fox would have been
J.
good,
Fox
but then I
is
don't know
probably...
if that's just me thinking Michael J. Fox could do anything.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if J. Fox might have been a good. Again, I feel he was still quite young. Yeah, Michael Keaton maybe. Keaton's pretty good. I don't know. Either way, none of these seem quite like an immediate like that's the choice. And apparently Spielberg felt the same way. None of those screen tests seem to have made much impact. But then Jeff Goldblum comes in and was so perfect for the role that Spielberg now insisted the character be written back into the movie.
Quite right. I mean, quite right.
Absolutely correct. So the reason Ian Malcolm exists is because Jeff Goldblum was just born to play that role. Yeah. How lucky they were that Jeff Goldblum turned up to audition. Some other alternate castings we'll quickly head on before we do production. Another alternate for Lex was Christina Ricci. That's good. I really like Christina Ricci. At some point we're going to get to the Addams Family movies, and like Christina Ricci, is amazing in those. She's brilliant, and she was great in this era. She would have been good for Lex. Obviously, love Ariana Richards, who played her, but yeah, that would have been a good choice. But apparently the reason Ariana Richards got the role was Spielberg had, on their auditions, asked them to do screams because he wanted to see how they could show fear because the character would scream multiple times in the movie. And Ariana Richards has just said that, this is a quote from her, I heard later on that Stephen had watched a few girls on tape that day, but I was the only one who had woken his sleeping wife off the couch. She had come running through the hallway to see if the kids were all right.
Oh, you got to go. You can't not go for the actress that does that.
Yeah, agreed. A young Jake Gyllenhaal was considered for the role of Tim. That didn't work out. That's an interesting potential. The kid they eventually hired, Joseph Mazzello, he had been turned down for the role of Jack Banning in Hook. Because Spielberg thought he was a bit too young. Not that he wasn't good. And he was very impressed with his audition and said, I was really impressed with your audition. I'm going to try and cast you in a future project. He cast him as Tim in this movie. But that did create a slight problem because in the book, the boy Tim is the older of the siblings. He's what Lex's age is in this movie, and Lex is like a young girl. The idea being that a young girl was like she was. It feels like in the book. I've not read the book like for a long time. Like it's out of my memory. But my memory, right, is that he's like the hacker, and he's also obsessed with dinosaurs,
Right.
and she's just kind of there to scream and be put in danger because she's young and vulnerable. Which.
Well, I'm glad they changed that.
Yes, well, that's what's funny about it, is because they cast so young for the boy, they couldn't go even younger for the girl. She'd be a baby. So they had to go older for the girl, and they gave her the hacker stuff, which then sort of balances the characters out, because the boy can be into dinosaurs, she can be the hacker. They both have a function, and they both get to be more used in the movie. I think that worked out for the best, even if it is just a bit of an important coincidence. It's just a complete we happen to choose this kid. It just led to them having to adjust it. It actually ends up making the movie a lot better, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Another side effect of the movie being cast before the script was written, based on the book, was that poor B.D. Wong auditioned using pages from the novel because the script wasn't finished yet, and he then expected to play a prominent role in the movie because the character has a prominent role in the book. He didn't find out until production had already started that he was only going to be needed for one day.
Oh, that's a shame that happened.
That is a shame. Funnily enough, though, he did then appear in multiple Jurassic Park sequels. That character has had a much larger role in subsequent years. All right, let's do some alternate casting for Ellie Sattler, Laura Dern's character. Here's the list. It's Sandra Bullock, Gwyneth Paltrow, Julianne Moore, Helen Hunt, Terry Hatcher, Elizabeth Hurley, Nicole Kidman, Robin Wright, and Sherilyn Flynn. I do like Terry Hatcher. She probably could have done this, but I don't think anyone's as good.
No, I don't think anyone's as good as Laura Dern. I think Julianne Moore could have done it as well.
I'm glad you say that, Chris, because she is cast as the female scientist that visits the island in the next movie. So,
oh, is she? Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So, yeah. She plays Dr. Sarah Harding in the next one. So yeah,
I look forward to checking that out.
Yes. So you'll get to see that. But it's funny that you picked her out specifically because that is in terms of Malcolm, they looked at a lot of men of a certain age with a medium amount of gravitas, or a large amount of gravitas, however you phrase it. Clint Eastwood, John Pertwee, Charlton Heston, and Marlon Brando were all looked at. Oh, God. Sean Connery. This is one of the iconic movies Sean Connery turned down. So for those who aren't aware, a running thing on this podcast and just in life is that Sean Connery turned down basically all of the biggest movies of the 90s and early thousands, and then did all the shittest movies of those eras. So he turned down The Matrix, he turned down Lord of the Rings, he turned down Jurassic Park. Look it up. It's fucking astounding how bad his radar for what was going to be a hit was. And he got so fed up of missing out on these huge franchises when he got offered League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's like, fine, I'll finally commit, I'll do one of them. And then that one was shit. So
Obviously what we got was astounding, but I do think Sean Connery could have done a good job as well.
Well, yeah, and obviously there's a link to Spielberg because he just played Henry Jones Sr. You know, he'd done Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, just a couple of years earlier, and he'd worked with Spielberg. So yeah, that felt like a good combo. And I do agree he would have had he does have the sort of warmth and cheekiness to sort of play a character like that. I think Sean Connery would have potentially been a good choice. I love who we ultimately got. I think Attenborough does a great job in this movie. We haven't really directly called him out, but just stunning, just absolutely stunning work from Richard Attenborough in this movie. He's top notch, absolutely top notch. Alternate castings for Muldoon are interesting. Jeffrey Rush, which is it's kind of in line with what we got. Bob Hoskins was a thought. That's an interesting choice. I don't know why we didn't quite go down that route, but I kind of like Bob Hoskins for Muldoon. But I think there's a part of me, though, that just loves Bob Hoskins, and he died so young that we didn't get enough Bob Hoskins. So I'm always like, if I could alternate reality into movies he would have done, I'd do it, but more just because, miss Bob Hoskins.
You get more Bob Hoskins,
But yeah, I'm still happy with who we got from Muldoon. I think the guy that does the job. His name isn't in front of me. What is his name? We haven't given him a shout out. Bob Peck. He's brilliant in this. Great character. He's the first one that's like, I think we should destroy them all, and it's like, yep, good call. Yeah, correct. So you won't be surprised to hear that Spielberg's first choice for Alan Grant was Harrison Ford. Again, following Indiana Jones, made a lot of sense. Good team up. They get on together. They probably had a shorthand at that point. But Ford turned it down, maybe for fear of being stereotyped as guys in jungles wearing hats. I don't know exactly what his reasoning was, but
can you imagine if Harrison Ford did Jurassic Park as well?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
That would be mad.
Star Wars, Jurassic Park, and Indiana Jones. Yeah, he'd be like
Indiana Jones,
Blade Runner. Yeah, that's a hell of a career. I mean, he's got a hell of a career anyway, but that is like that would be another very large notch in that belt as franchises go. Yeah. Look, I like those actors. Sorry, I've not gotten the other names out yet, but I like Harrison Ford. I would have enjoyed Harrison Ford in this role, but I really, really like Sam Neill in this role. He's very special. It's a very, very particular performance he gives that I really like. So I'm glad it worked out the way it did. Other names considered were Dennis Quaid, Kevin Costner, Mel Gibson, and Robin Williams. 2 people turned it down. William Hurt turned it down without reading the book or the script. So... just didn't want to do it. Just dinosaurs? Nah,
there's a man that just doesn't like dinosaurs.
Yeah, or didn't like the pay, maybe. I'm not sure. But Kurt Russell also turned it down. And now he did turn it down specifically due to pay. He asked for more money, and they said, we can't afford to give you more money. So there, that's one of those things. So as a result of all of this, like, toing and froing with William Hurt and Kurt Russell, who were both, like, on the hook for it and offered the role but turned it down, when they finally cast Sam Neill in the role... It was like 4 weeks before filming began. So Neil said, it all happened real quick. I hadn't read the book. I knew nothing about it. I hadn't heard anything about it. And in a matter of weeks, I knew I was working with Spielberg. Talk about going in at the deep end, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, so moving on to the production, actually, he struggled to affect like an American accent for the role, and when production began, halfway through the first day, Spielberg was like, yeah, just forget it and talk with your regular voice. But then a day later, he was like, no, maybe go halfway. The American accent doesn't work, the New Zealand accent doesn't work. Can we find a middle ground? Yeah. But I love Sam Neill very much. Hunt for the Wilder People I watched again recently, and he's fucking so good in that movie. Anyway, the T-Rex animatronic would occasionally malfunction due to rain. Producer Kathleen Kenny recalls the T-Rex went into the heebie-jeebies sometimes, scared the crap out of us. We'd be like eating lunch, and and all of a sudden, the animatronic T-Rex would come alive. And at first we didn't know what was happening, and then we realised it was the rain. You'd hear people start screaming every time. That is terrifying. We're all on lunch, no one's touching it, and then suddenly it like opens its mouth and starts moving. Yeah, no thank you. Spielberg wanted the T-Rex to announce its presence before the audience saw it, and he had the idea from watching. He watched his mirror vibrate in the car from the base while listening to Earth, Wind and Fire, and was like, "Can we do that?" And the team were like, yeah, we'll do that in water. No problem. We can do that. He had the idea for it in like a cup. He was like, cup of water. They're like, yeah, no problem. And they had no idea how to make that work, like as an effect. And it was like literally the night before they were supposed to do the scene, they still hadn't been able to create the vibration that Spielberg had described. That exact plop in the water that you see, that sort of that ripple from the center. What they figured out eventually is if you put the cup on a guitar and pluck the string, it would do it. So what they then did was rig the car up with guitar strings in the dash, and then there was a guy underneath just plucking them to create the ripple.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but they worked that out the night before, so that is properly handing in your homework last minute. That is some proper lastminute.com stuff. So the production. We should talk about this. So the production had a 3-week shoot scheduled for Hawaii. Most of it was going to be spent on Kauai, but there were a couple of other bits and bobs they were shooting on some nearby islands. On September the 11th, 1992, which was the last scheduled day of the Kauai shoot, something called Hurricane Iniki, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, passed directly over the island. Now, the cast and crew found out too late that the hurricane was coming. They took shelter in the hotel. Wind speeds were 120 miles per hour. The hotel rattled and roared the whole night. Sets were destroyed. They were all told to fill their baths with water because they didn't know when the water, after the hurricane, if there'd be running water. So that would be their access to water. Food rations were arranged. It was a whole thing. Spielberg and a small crew did venture outside to get some footage of the hurricane and the wind and the rain because they wanted to use that in the film because the film has a storm. Dedicated to the art is Spielberg. No one was hurt or anything. I'm not going to drop a... we've done that in the past with trivia where it's suddenly be like, and someone died as a result of these choices on set. Nothing like that. They were all fine. But the funniest part of this story to me is that Richard Attenborough stayed in his hotel room and slept through the entire storm. When he asked later how he could have possibly slept through the storm, Attenborough replied, "My dear boy, I survived the Blitz."
Fair play. Oh, fair play.
Never change. I love that man. What an absolute hero. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, rest in peace. You absolutely delightful man.
Yeah, totally.
That's a good story. So one of the scenes they didn't get to shoot on the island of Kauai was the scene depicting the Gallimimus herd. Because the island just got absolutely ravaged by the hurricane. All the sets got destroyed. So they filmed it 2 weeks later at something called Kualaua Ranch, which is located on Oahu, which is another island there. And they actually thought in the end the place they shot it was more beautiful than the place they'd chosen to do it on Kauai. So it worked out for the better in the end. Despite the hurricane, the Hawaiian shoot came in essentially on budget and on schedule. Now, I just want to point something out about this, because I had said to Nadia before we watched... Well, Nadia didn't end up watching it. We were talking about the movie, and I was saying, it's funny because the trivia could be really long, but there's also a chance the trivia is not too long, because often the trivia is all the things that go wrong, and Spielberg is kind of renowned for being on time, on budget, maybe even earlier and under budget, really controlled sets. He's a filmmaker and an artist, sure, but he's also really good at running a film, running a set. He always seems to get the movie made on the right budget and in the right time. He's sort of very professional like that. And then I was reading the trivia and I saw that, and it was despite the hurricane, the Hawaiian shoot came in on budget and on schedule. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. The film actually wrapped 12 days ahead of schedule in the end. That's how efficient Spielberg
fair
was.
Play.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I sort of said that offhandedly, oh, that's his reputation. I didn't realize Jurassic Park was an example of his professionalism and precision.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He's very good at that sort of stuff. So Spielberg, it's one of the reasons Hollywood loves him, because he's he does good movies, but he's also he's not a crazy auteur that's going to go over budget and request more days and mad stuff, because the art, Spielberg obviously is making artistic choices and making these great movies, but he also has just a good sense of the business of it, which I think is not all creative people have that bone also. So yeah, fair play to Spielberg. So he actually changed the climax of the movie a few weeks before the end of the shoot, because he saw an early visual effects footage from the first two T-Rex sequences and realized that more might be possible. So the original climax involved them the raptors basically climbing on that skeleton with the guys, the skeleton collapsing, and the raptors getting crushed under the skeleton of the T-Rex, which I actually think is pretty flat as an ending. That does feel like Deus Ex Machina. They just happen to get crushed. Cool. So Spielberg thought that the audience would hate him if the T-Rex didn't make one final sort of heroic appearance, because at this point he basically considered the T-Rex the star of the movie. And that's when he came up with the idea of the T-Rex coming in at the last minute and sort of taking on the raptors and accidentally saving the day.
Nice.
Yeah. Unlike the first appearance of the T-Rex, they didn't even use the animatronic. That one was 100% computer animated, that final T-Rex shot.
Looks good, though. I don't think you can...
Yeah, looks good.
You can't really see the
Yes,
seams.
it still moves with the right weight. Presumably Phil Tippett's work. Come on, Phil. You had one job. Sorry, I'm never gonna get old. That joke never gets old. So it's yeah. I think it looks great. So yeah, no complaints from me. Let's see. Oh, they did the really smart thing here. They edited the movie first before they added any special effects. So this is something that's often complained about with Marvel movies, is that because they're constantly like, we're doing a new scene, the special effects end up suffering because they're getting new takes all the time, different requests. Disney are changing this, changing that. The movie that came out earlier this year, or no, a couple of years ago now, called The Creator, they locked the picture and then added the special effects to the finished edit of the movie. This is what the content of the movie now. Put the special effects into this, and it just saves money and time and stops you from wasting effort putting visual effects in scenes that then get cut or anything like that. So they did that on this movie. Smart choice. Very good. So into post-production, just to talk more generally about it, Michael Crichton was asked why the novel and the movie has Jurassic in the title, but has the dinosaur from the Cretaceous period on the cover. He replied that never occurred to him and admitted it was just the best-looking design. Michael Crichton, never change. I love you.
Yeah, I also think that's a fair answer because I didn't notice that.
Yeah, who cares?
Fair enough.
Yeah, who cares? This might surprise you, Chris. Would you have a guess at how much screen time the dinosaurs have? So the movie is just over 2 hours long. I think it's 2 hours and 6 minutes. Do you want to have a guess at how much screen time dinosaurs have in the movie?
I would guess a fair chunk, 70 minutes or something.
It's 15.
Jeez. Wow.
There are 9 minutes of Stan Winston's animatronics and 6 minutes of ILM CGI. It is about 12% of the film's visuals include dinosaurs.
Wow. That's crazy.
Is it crazy? That is a skilled filmmaker doing a lot with a little. Is what that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
The infamous roar of the T-Rex is a composite. This is brilliant. I love this so much. If you said to me you can give only one piece of trivia, I would give you this one because I just think this is fascinating. So the T-Rex roar, which is now iconic, is a composite mix of a dog, a penguin, a tiger, an alligator, and a baby elephant.
That's awesome.
So the deep alligator vocal acts as the low frequency element, but Gary Rydstrom, who was one of the sound engineers that created this, he says the key part is the high frequency elephant, the baby elephant. He described how during the recording session, the baby elephant only did the iconic cute high pitched scream that forms the basis of all of the T-Rex roars in this film once. We kept trying to get it to do it again, and the handlers were saying, "We've never heard it do that before. That was a weird sound." So the iconic T-Rex roar from this movie that then gets used in all the subsequent movies as well, maybe edited or reproduced, but that sound that is now so synonymous with this creature was primarily based in a baby elephant making a weird noise it had never made before and never made after.
That's awesome.
And they just happened to catch it on recording.
That's brilliant.
That's very good. I love that so much. All right, it's Nerd O'Clock, Chris. You ready for Nerd O'Clock?
Yeah, I don't have to make a noise for that, do I?
No, just it's Nerd O'Clock. The mosquito trapped in amber is an elephant mosquito. This is the only mosquito that doesn't drink blood, and therefore would not contain dinosaur DNA.
Phenomenal. 10 points.
Yeah. This movie is weirdly responsible for the Star Wars prequels. While Industrial Light and Magic were overseeing post-production on the movie, George Lucas obviously, I think owned that company at the time, but also was good friends with Spielberg and was very aware of Jurassic Park. Stuck his head in to have a look at what they were doing and finally decided that the technology had caught up with his vision and began looking at doing Episode 1. So anyone who really hates Episode 1, you blame Jurassic Park.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. All right, we're doing some dino shit, Chris. Hopefully this is interesting, but this is sort of...
Dino droppings?
Yeah, sorry, it's dino. We're going to do dino droppings. This is information about, the differences between real-life dinosaurs and the dinosaurs in the movie. I think these are really interesting, but I fully expect Chris to check out About now and start listing Hansen tiles.
No, I might. Can I nip to the loo?
Will you be listening at least?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Sweet.
There you go.
Thanks very much.
Everyone wins. Interest in paleontology waned during the Atomic Age and the space race, but according to Dr. Nate Smith of the Natural History Museum's Dinosaur Institute, Jurassic Park coming out generated a huge amount of interest among young people. They all wanted to become paleontologists and get into the field. As a result, numerous new dinosaur species have been discovered since then, at roughly a rate of 50 new discoveries per year, roughly one per week. So, Jurassic Park has a lot to answer for, I think, in terms of getting people into paleontology, which I think is cool. Spielberg wanted the velociraptors to be 10 feet tall. Real velociraptors were basically about 1.5 feet tall, which is obviously much smaller than the ones in the movie. But shortly after the release, there was a dinosaur discovered in Utah that was almost identical to the velociraptor in the movie. One of the names they proposed for this new species was the Utahraptor spielbergi, but they didn't stick with that. I feel bad that I just said the words Utahraptor spielbergi, and Chris isn't here to comment on that, because I feel like that's one Chris would want to comment on. But you know what? You snooze, you lose, Mr. Hanson Songs. I don't know. Gallimimus means fowl mimic. And although Grant never answers Lex's question, Gallimimus were carnivores, but they only went after other dinosaurs' eggs. They didn't just hunt fully living functional prey. So they probably wouldn't have been eaten by the Gallimimus, just trod on, just stomped to death. Insert Mufasa joke here. Raptors did not hunt in packs like dogs, as depicted in the movie. There is actually an absolute wall of text on IMDb about why scientists know this, but dear Lord, even I refuse to read that here, so we're not doing that one. But apparently they didn't do that. They were lone hunters, so there you go. In real life, paleontologists allege a T-Rex could run up to 50 miles per hour. But in the movie, the way they were shooting it, they could only really get it. The bones couldn't support the weight of the model of the animatronic and a bunch of other stuff. So they dialed it down and said it'll run 25 miles per hour. And in the movie, they changed it. So at one point, Hammond says, "Oh, it's been clocked. Its max speed is 32 miles an hour," which is not scientifically accurate. Are you back, Chris? I thought I might have heard a rustle.
I am back.
You are back. Did you have anything to say on?
I think Spielbergi supported Oasis in the 90s, and
yeah.
I think the fact about the Jurassic Park inspiring a shitload of people to go out and discover more dinosaurs is phenomenal. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
What a lovely, enduring legacy for this film.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think this was interesting as well. The T-Rex's visual acuity being based on movement is true, but it's apparently true of most animals. Apparently that's really, really common in both the animal and dinosaur kingdom, that their vision is somewhat based in movement. The bit the movie sort of gets wrong is a detail it misses, which is that the T-Rex had an incredible sense of smell. So when it's in Alan Grant's and Lex's face, and it has a big old sniff, it probably would have figured out they were there. So, yeah. This one's interesting, because this one's sort of based in science, but incorrect science. So the Dilophosaurus, which is the dinosaur that takes out Nidri with the frilly neck and the venom spitting, that's become so iconic that basically every other appearance of that dinosaur in popular media, including toys, has at least one of those traits, if not both. Spitting venom, frilly neck thing. Which means that they actually leave out the thing the dinosaur is most known for, which is its double chest, because that's what its name comes from. It translates to double crest, I should say. From its double crested, it means double crested lizard. That's what Dilophosaurus means. But in reality, the spitting ability was pretty much made up by Michael Crichton, and adding the frill came from the concept artists for the film. But it wasn't completely based in nothing. It was based in incorrect science. So in the late 20th century, scientists mistakenly thought that Dilophosaurus had a weak jaw. But the reason they thought this was the fossil skull they had was incomplete, distorted, and had been badly reconstructed. So they then speculated that it must have killed its prey with something that wasn't its bite. And that led to the theory that it might have a venom. And then Crichton took that and went with the venom spitting. But it was all based on bad science, so it's just absolute nonsense, top to bottom.
I can only imagine if you asked Crichton about it, he would tell you that he was bored of dinosaurs and didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, he'd be like, "Yeah, whatever. It spits venom. It's venom. It's more fun." Can I just say, I'm not mocking Crichton at all. I'm on his side on everything he said here.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Yeah.
I'm not against this man at all. I agree with him. Yeah, stop being nerds.
I think he's a hero.
Yeah, he's a hero. And unless something comes out about him, in which case we never liked him. He's a terrible person.
In case we take it all back.
Yeah, just got to cover our bases.
Oh, he died. I didn't realise he'd passed.
I didn't know that actually. That's sad. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he passed away in 2008.
Oh wow, I had no idea. Oh, that's really sad. Well, there you go. Absolute legend. Will be missed, I'm sure. So another nerd thing here relating to the mosquitoes, and this is proper like, what the fuck are you doing? And I just wrote it down because it made me laugh. Dilophosaurus lived in the early Jurassic period before mosquitoes are confirmed to have existed. So if Jurassic Park was able to find any DNA, they wouldn't have had a lot to go on. But fans have used this to fansplain the differences from the real-world Dilophosaurus and the one in Jurassic Park, because what they say is because there was less of its DNA to be found, they had to do more guessing, and that's why the final dinosaur is so different from the actual one. It's why it had the venom and the frilly bits. I think that's fun.
Just fair logic.
Yeah, it's good logic. Yeah, it's good logic. The guest encounter with the sick Triceratops. Oh, yeah, we need to talk about this. So basically, there's a whole sequence in this movie where they find a sick Triceratops, and they're like, why is it sick? And it's like this big mystery, and then the movie never really goes back to it or explains it in any way, shape, or form. Now, I think the scene exists to demonstrate the folly of bringing these dinosaurs into the modern world and how dinosaurs might eat plants that they weren't supposed to because they're out of their time and they're out of their ecosystem, and nature isn't really supposed to work like that. But there is an explanation in the book. So basically, there are birds that swallow rocks and have them in their stomach as gizzard stones, or they're more in their digestive tract. So they live in their sort of throat, essentially. And as they eat the food, the stone aids in grinding up the food and helps in digestion. Stegosauruses and Triceratops apparently lacked suitable teeth for grinding food, and so are believed to have done the same thing. And what would happen is every 6 weeks, the rock would become too smooth to successfully grind up the food, so the animal would regurgitate the rock. So in the book, the explanation is that it was eating rocks to help digest its food, but would eventually pick up the West Indian lilac berries that are poisonous and hold them in its throat and use them to try and digest the food. And then every 6 weeks would regurgitate them, which of course would mean why the berry isn't in the droppings. But also explains how the animal got poisoned by it. Now, admittedly, none of that needs to be in this movie, because that is quite a long explanation and doesn't really add anything to the movie. But maybe we need to adjust the scene a little bit, because if we're not going to explain it, the amount of emphasis we put on Ellie being like 6 weeks, something's weird about this. You know what I mean? Like it makes you feel like the movie's going to answer that question, and it never does.
Yeah, when that scene came up earlier, I in my head went, I don't think we went back to that. What was that about? So yeah. I agree that explanation is too long for it, but in that case, do something in terms of having the scene there.
Yeah, have her find the berries in the excrement. Like, it's not true to the book, I guess, but like, okay, yeah, it ate the poisoned lilac, which shouldn't have been there. I'd be totally satisfied with that explanation. Like, it's yeah, right. It's not as interesting maybe as that, but for a movie and some shorthand to move us on, yeah, that would have been good. Anyway. Ellie Sattler is basically auditioning to be House, but for dinosaurs in this movie. She's going to solve that medical mystery. Funnily enough, 3 years after this movie wrapped, it was discovered that many carnivorous dinosaurs were fully feathered, and some even had wings rather than arms, implying that Dr. Grant had been right and they shared common ancestors with birds. But it's not a coincidence. Scientists had already suspected raptors specifically had feathers well before the movie was made. In fact, a paleontologist and artist called Gregory Paul, whose scientific ideas inspired the novel, he'd illustrated raptors with feathers in the mid-80s. So it's not... The movie didn't predict a thing that then became true. Crichton did a lot of research for his book, drew the bird parallel deliberately, and then later on we discovered that was more accurate than we even knew. So, yeah. Last piece of dino nerd news. The T-Rex being feathered is apparently the source of a lot of debates. Its ancestors and distant relatives were certainly covered in a primitive fuzz-like feather, but there's no physical evidence for the T-Rex itself ever having this fuzz. Scientists believe it either lost the need for feathers as it evolved, or it was only ever feathered when young and shed them as it grew into an adult. So there you go. All right, we're out of the dinosaur stuff. We're nearly there. Just box office and cars exist. So we did okay. We did okay. It's been a long one, but thankfully the trivia has been a little bit tighter than I was expecting, considering. The highest-grossing film of 1993 was obviously Jurassic Park. It actually outdid Spielberg's own film E.T. the Extraterrestrial as the biggest box office success in film history at the time, not adjusting for inflation. Now, I actually pulled up that entire list because I was like, who has handed that award back and forth over the years? I was curious. The list is not long. So it's Birth of a Nation in 1915, and that holds it for a long, long time until Gone with the Wind comes out in 1939. Then The Sound of Music takes it from that in 65, The Godfather in 72, Jaws, so Spielberg, again, 75, Lucas, 77, with Star Wars, Spielberg back at it again in 82 with E.T., and then Spielberg takes it from himself in 93, and then we go into the sort of modern day, which is the sequence of events most people are familiar with, which is Titanic in 97, Avatar in 2009, Endgame in 2019, and of course, Avatar in 2022. Took it back after a re-release, but this movie's box office success is kind of staggering. So we talked about the budgets on these movies quite a lot, Chris. So you've probably got a good sense of how much a movie like this usually costs. Have just a ballpark guess, no wrong answers. What would you estimate a movie like this might cost as a guess?
Well, back then, obviously not inflation or anything like that. I would say 80 million around then.
Okay, I think you've gotten very close. I was really surprised to hear this budget was $63 million.
Jesus. If anything, I thought I undercooked it. So to hear 63 is mad.
It feels like it's $120 million movie. And admittedly, like all movies, they then spent double that on marketing. And actually, this is a rewind review first, Chris. I actually know exactly what they spent on the marketing for this film. For the first time ever.
Really?
Yeah. So we always say, there's the budget, it's $63 million. It made, in this case, $978 million. Lots of profit. And then I'll always add the caveat, but we don't know how much they spent on marketing. It's usually about double the budget, right? But we don't know that. They're very, very... They're squiffy with that on purpose so they can fudge stuff and, movie maths to sort of like not pay people certain things because they can claim the marketing cost more than it did to make it look like the movie was less successful than it was so they can keep more of the money. We've talked about it before. It's a whole thing. Hollywood accounting is mad. But for whatever reason, it has been confirmed that the marketing budget for this movie was $65 million. Thus, verifying our rough estimate that marketing a movie costs about double its budget. Now, I'm not sure that's universally true, but that's always been the rule of thumb we've been told. And it certainly tracks here. So yeah, the movie cost 63 to make. The marketing was 65. So its total expenditure was 128 million. But we We won't count the marketing when we do it on the sheet and stuff. But because no other movie has its marketing included on the stat, so I'm not going to add it here. But yeah, 120 million spent, and they made 978 million, just shy of $1 billion. That is a hell of a lot of money to make on a movie. It was actually the first movie to cross the $400 and $500 million mark on the international box office. Although I do slightly dispute that, just on the grounds that I know factually from my own research doing this podcast that box office records for international markets was deeply incomplete up until mid to late 90s. So a lot of movies from the 80s just don't have international sales data at all. So we can't 100% know it was not the first movie to cross that threshold. We can it's probably true, though, to be honest.
But like you say, they can't say for sure.
No, they can't say for sure, because like a movie like a Star Wars or maybe a Jaws, someone told me one of those made 400 million outside of the US. It seems possible. It's a lot, but not impossible. Yeah. Anyway, it's time, Chris, for Cars Exist. Beautiful. So the iconic Jeep used in this movie is the brand new at the time, 1993 Jeep Wrangler. But of course, the most iconic car of this movie is, of course, the driverless electric cars used for the park tour. Those are a 1993 Ford Explorer XLT. Now, these are interesting because they're not driverless. In reality, they're SUVs. I don't even think they're electric, if I'm being honest with you. So to create the driverless car, there was a driver in the rear of the vehicle, hidden under the canvas, using a screen to drive the car. Basically, he had a steering wheel and there were two cameras mounted on the car, one on the dash near the steering wheel and one on the bumper. Both cameras are completely visible throughout the movie, but of course you just assume it's part of the park technology because all of this is being monitored. Like Malcolm taps a camera that's in the car, doesn't he? So you don't question the camera mounted to the car, but that's how the guy in the back that was driving it could see. Which seems dangerous, but then I watched the movie and was like, I don't know, man, that car goes pretty fucking slow all the time, so it's probably not at all dangerous. He just kind of edges it along that track, so I think that's fine. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to do like a big car chase scene with the driver not actually at the wheel.
And again, just based on trailers, I assume we reach car chases and dinosaurs by the time we hit Jurassic World. I'm pretty sure in one of those trailers a dinosaur jumps on Chris Pratt riding a motorbike.
Yeah. The tone of these movies shifts somewhat.
Yeah.
I've still got a soft spot for them. I still think the first Jurassic World is mostly good. Mostly. It's got plot problems, but yeah. I'm really excited about the other ones though. So yeah, look, it's that's Jurassic Park, man. We did it. 2.5 hours, which is a long time.
Boom.
But I'm relieved that it was only that, because I feel like there's a world where this was a much longer review.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a good balance, and I really, really enjoyed the film. And I'm excited because obviously I know the reputation of Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, so I'm excited to discover those movies.
Yeah. Me too. I remember them pretty well, but I saw them last time I saw them. I reckon I was fairly young, so I was still kind of like probably just quite happy just to let the nostalgia do its thing. I do remember though distinctly that there's one particular sequence in the second one that really does capture the magic of one of the sequences in this movie really well in terms of just like, tension and action. And I don't know if it'll hold up on rewatch, but I remember watching it as a kid and being, or as a younger man, and just like being really impressed with it. So we will see.
But presumably, again, you've not seen either for a long time.
Long time. Yeah. Because I think I rewatched Jurassic Park when Jurassic World came out, but I don't think.
Right. Okay.
But I don't think I rewatched the other two. I think I jumped straight from Jurassic Park to Jurassic World. because it's always a good excuse to rewatch. There's, Jurassic Park, just rewatch it. Why not? But that's what we're doing next week. I think technically, actually, I think it's your choice. So, do you want to officially make it official, or are you going to throw a wrench in the plan?
I would like to pick Jurassic Park: The Lost World. Then.
Thank you very much. We'll leave it there. It's already been a long one. I tell you what, actually, very quickly, thinking of the time and the length of a podcast, nothing depresses me more, Chris, last week than after we recorded and I edited Grease, realizing that our review of Grease is longer than our review of Back to the Future 1.
Oh man, is that the? Oh wow, Is that the case for this as well?
Yeah, definitely.
That just says we didn't spend enough time on Back to the Future.
Yeah, and I think we didn't do I don't think the truth was as detailed back then as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a shame to think about. I'm trying to think about that. But with that, Back to the Future was a really early one. It was like we'd done like 10, 15 of these by the time we did Back to the Future. So maybe we should have held off on that one until we were more experienced at doing this sort of like if we'd figured out the format for this better. But hey ho, that's everything.
So it was our first trilogy then, I take it.
It was in the second series. So yeah, we hadn't done a trilogy yet. And we even like I listened to a couple of seconds of it because I was like, what did we do? Like, well, how did we, like, I didn't end up listening to much more. I only ended up listening to a few minutes. I was going to listen to more of it to sort of see how we kept the review so short and if we missed out. And, I got distracted. Whatever happened, I didn't end up listening to much of it. But the first couple of minutes, I'm like, we're doing something really new. We're actually going to do all three, just this once, because these movies really connect. They lead into each other. We think we can justify doing it that way. Little did I know we were setting up a trend for forever.
Yeah, for us to do every year.
Yeah. It's served us well though. It's helped us get through some good like trilogies that I think definitely have deserved to be covered that way. I'm excited to be doing these Jurassic Park ones. With that all in mind, though, obviously, if you, dear listener, have thoughts, you want to yell at us maybe for not spending as much time as we could have and should have on Back to the Future 1, feel free to send us your thoughts at mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. You can also get us, of course, via the Discord. The Discord is accessible via our Patreon, and that is where, for as little as $1 a month, you can support the channel and the work we do here, the podcasts we do, and get access to this 1 week early. So if you want to hear us talk about, if you're listening to this on Spotify and you're desperate to hear us talk about The Lost World and what might be one of the greatest transitions in cinema history, yeah, I said it. Little tease for you, Chris. He says with a laugh. You can hear us talk about that now over at patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, where for as little as $1 a month, like I said, you get these a week early. And help support what we do. Of course, that is not the only way you can support. There's tons of other ways you can do it. You can find us on whatever platform you do engage with our podcast and interact with it, whether that's liking it, commenting on it, reviewing it, stars, hearts, whatever it is. Anything you do tells that platform you enjoyed it and makes it more likely to share it with other people. Of course, on that note, you're welcome to share it yourself. Tell a friend if you've got a friend who absolutely loves Jurassic Park and might find some of the trivia of this interesting or some of the thoughts on it and this interesting, all of the gushing that we did. Feel free, tell them to give us a chance. We're still here. we're
still doing this.
We'll welcome that. Especially because at the moment the Patreon is just going lower and lower because we're not doing Avatar anymore. It turns out most people were supporting because of analysing Avatar and not so much for rewind reviews. It was a thing I already suspected, but now have had proven.
I don't know why Dan's doing that as a musical bit. It's, the jaunty jingle cannot hide his pain.
You know me too well. It's a little disappointing, but it's again totally expected. We did see a small dip whenever we went out of an analysing Avatar season into rewind reviews, and then a few people re-signing up. And I always had a suspicion that people would mostly signing up to get analysing Avatar early. But when that stopped because there is no more Avatar, lo and behold. Apparently, rewind reviews not as big of a reason. It's taken a bit of a plummet. It's fine. It's fine. We don't mind. It's a hobby. We do it. It'd be nice for us to break even, which is what we were doing with the Patreon. If people want to help and support us and get us back to there, we appreciate it. You should feel no obligation to do that. We always steal something that they said on the Weekly Planet back in the day, which is if you want to support us, that's great, but the amount that you should give should be the sort of amount that you wouldn't notice if you dropped it down a drain. Like it's the amount that you basically shouldn't notice if it was missing. Like that's the amount to pay.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, absolutely.
Anything that you would notice, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Absolutely not. But yeah, well, thank you everyone for the support you do. We do love all the support we get, whether it is just continuing to listen or telling a friend or any of the stuff we just mentioned. No, we very much appreciate you all for doing that. And particularly on a big episode like this one, I always am very aware that we might have new listeners. So sorry if that post-amble, was a little bit longer than usual, but there you go. That's everything for this week. Come back in a week's time, or if you're on the Patreon right now, wink, we need the money. No, kidding. For Jurassic World.
We need the money!
It's all about that Wonga. God, that's a word I've never said before. Wonga. There you go. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. We love you. I'm going to hand over to Chris because he puts this thing out of its misery. He makes this thing extinct.
I think the last 5 minutes more than ever out of its misery. My name's Chris Billigan.
My name's Dan Doran.
And this review has been rewound.